Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Y'all Mean of Revolution and Early Voting Bombshell. We got early voting bombshell. What is happening to Kamala? Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Yeah, it don't look too good for the Kamala and the Democrats. We know they might try to rig it tomorrow, but we got to get into this early voting news. What's the early voting news?
Come on, boys. Let's make America great again. It's your turn, buddy.
Before you cast your vote in this election, think about how it'll impact the people you care about the most.
Daddy!
Remember, you can vote any way you want, and no one will ever know.
Do your patriotic duty.
You bet I did, brother.
Now I'm speaking, and I'm not paid to be here. I don't have a teleprompter. I'm winging this right now, everybody. I don't need a telephone. I never went to a Diddy party.
Let's get out the vote. 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 Let's win.
Democrats are panicking, and I don't mean the actual voters. Yeah, some of them are panicking or just living on copium, but we're talking about senior Democratic people who are rank and file, people who have, that are part of the machine. And they're not just panicking what I see on Twitter, but they're panicking publicly on major news, cable news, on CNN, on MSNBC. Take a look at what Mark Halperin talked about this morning. That is absolutely unbelievable that somebody like this would make this type of admission.
My sense of the early vote is it is not as disastrous as it was in the first 3 days for the Democrats, but it's still really bad. And the Harris campaign has done a great job of spinning the national media on it. And when you talk to people in the states, whether there's two categories of people in the states. There's more junior people who don't lie about the data and what it means. What you have now is tons of senior Democrats are in the states. They're door knocking, like people who've run presidential campaigns are literally going to Michigan and Pennsylvania and door knocking. And those people are honest with me because they're worried, and they're not in the business of like Wilmington is. They're really worried. Okay, they may be wrong. They may be wrongly worried. The Pennsylvania numbers when they come out today, if she's below 400,000 vote lead compared to Biden's lead in 2020, it's going to be problematic for her. What is the biggest indication that we've seen that the early vote is a problem for her? It's Jim Messina talking to Jen Psaki. Jim Messina, if you go watch his cable TV appearances, he has been, first for Biden and then for Harris, the most boosterish person about them. Just rose-colored. Everything that's going on with Biden and Harris is fantastic. Here he is with Jen Psaki talking about the early vote. Please play 103.
Okay, what's their biggest concern right now if you're the Harris team?
Well, look, I think it's a couple things. The early vote numbers are a little scary, and you and I have been texting back and forth. Republicans didn't do what they did last time. Last time Trump said don't early vote, and so they didn't. Republicans do have an advantage in early vote numbers. When the early vote come in, it's going to look a little bit different than 2020, and that's scary. Scary.
So Dan, decode that for people who aren't familiar with Jim Messina. How scary is it that Jim Messina says it's scary?
It's scary. I mean, it's brutal honesty. And, you look at every major urban center in the swing states.
What the hell did I tell y'all yesterday when they were trying to tell us she's up in an hour? And I saw, here they go with the BS. That right here on Cold Figure TV News, we've been paying attention to all of the swing states, all of the early voting, and all the early voting said that the Republicans had the momentum, not the Democrats. But they tried to pull election interference and try to lie to the population and motivate their people to come out and say, oh, we finna stomp on Trump. Y'all get out of here. We're going to have a victory party. Knowing they were down. Knowing what people weren't as enthused for Kamala as they were saying. Why? Because you should know that. How many people enthused in your life? How many people do you run across every day that's telling you they going out there for Kamala? I'm not running across any. They were lying about it.
And there is not one, not Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Detroit, Atlanta, Las Vegas, Phoenix, where Democrats are doing well. And the problem is it's two voting blocks. It's Blacks, Latinos.
There isn't one place, swing state, which they need, that they were doing well, like they had been lying and saying. No, they were making it up.
People of color and young voters, they're not seeing the turnout yet that they feel that they're going to need. So the issue is, can you make it up in the suburbs or with older voters, as you talked about with Ann?
Now, even this is sketchy. We're going to have to keep our eyes on this because once again, they're trying to, I pointed this out yesterday, once again, they're trying to tell us that the bread and butter of the Democratic Party, Black voters, Latinos, young voters, they don't need that anymore because a lot of Blacks wasn't for her. A lot of Latinos wasn't for her. A lot of young people wasn't for her. They're bread and butter. Now they're trying to fool us to believe, maybe she'll be able to make that up with the white soccer suburban moms. Bullshit.
And the other day, but something's got to give. Otherwise, it's hard to see, where the numbers are going to come from.
So they're having their top people outdoor knocking and trying to scrounge up votes. And in particular, I mean, it's in every major urban area that they're losing, that the early vote is not turning out for them. And usually Democrats crush the early vote and Republicans are day of, are election day voters. But this time we're seeing a huge surge of Republicans are voting early, and they're still, and some people say, well, it's cannibalizing, meaning eating into the margin or the share of voters that they will get on election day. There may be a little bit of that, but they're still, based on the number of registered Democrats and newly registered Democrats, is very rare for someone to register and then not vote, register the same, election cycle, and then they just don't go out and vote. That just doesn't happen. So they still have a huge number of people out there that are yet to vote that are Republican.
Most worried about right now?
Well, look, the watchword of the day is humility here. When you have polls that are this close, and I'm sitting next to one of the great pollsters, and I think she would tell you, when you have polls this close, you're not sure of anything. And it really matters who shows up because these polls are not precise. So what I'm worried about is you're counting on some women who are independent Republican women to come out and vote for Harris. Is that going to materialize? Is the gender gap going to be what you need it to be? Are minority voters going to come out in the numbers of African-American voters in particular? And are you going to get the margins that you want there?
No.
So there are a lot of open questions, and they're obviously working it hard right now. There are feet on the street, and they're doing the kind of work that you do in a race like this. But this race is filled with uncertainty today.
What is
even David Axelrod, who is not as, alarmist as as some people, but he gives it away by just even saying out loud how worried they actually are about these numbers.
I found this fascinating. Trump is leading with Hispanic voters by 8% in Pennsylvania. And I don't think we've ever seen a Republican beating the Democrat. Usually it's,
He had a 6% bounce in Pennsylvania with Latino, Puerto Rican. See, they try to pull that racist Puerto Rican thing. Puerto Rican say, man, we ain't trying to hear that. We're not trying to hear that. And even they're voting for Trump. You see, these people have been lying so much. Now it's evident she's getting stepped on big time. Because how they always knew they were doing good was early voting. Well, they not doing good in early voting. They're losing big in early voting. So the same day voters, they're not going to have a whole bunch of same day voters. They didn't shot their shot. No, it's going to be a swarm of more Republican voters on election day.
How much are they eroding the lead of Hispanic voters? But he's ahead with Hispanic voters in Pennsylvania. I don't know how large, of a voter group that is in Pennsylvania.
You know, it's a really interesting trend that we're starting to see. More and more Hispanic voters are going for Donald Trump. In many ways, what I've heard from them, and we had a couple voters in our focus groups who were talking about how unfair the immigration system seems to be, that they came in the right way and people are coming in the wrong way, that for them to come to America, it was about opportunity and not handouts. Now they feel like people are coming in, opening up their hands and getting free iPhones, free places to stay. And it just isn't the American dream that they felt was created for them. And that's not what they want to see happening to America. And so I think you might be seeing that play out a little bit in these polls.
Now, they're very worried about all these different states, all of the swing states, which are not looking good for her. But particularly in Pennsylvania, it's really, you know, as we've said, the election is here.
I was at the rally today. For y'all who haven't read my wall, I wasn't able to go live because I was just too much into Revolution. I can't be holding a phone while Revolution is in the app. But I got all the footage. I got all the damn footage, and it's as great as y'all thought it was ever going to be. The revolutionaries was able to force the Shoeshine and Dedrick Johnson and the chief to come talk to the mother as we went into the Capitol, we went in the city hall and seized that goddamn building. Now, a bunch of y'all say, oh, you ain't seized no building. Oh, the footage don't lie. The footage don't lie. And y'all will be seeing that footage real goddamn soon. I'm waiting on Ampu the Great to send it to me. They was doing Facebook Live. So they sent it to his Facebook. He got a video loaded. Just send it to me. But y'all gonna be proud of y'all revolutionary brother because I don't play with the goddamn criminals like the police department, that Shoeshine and Dedrick Johnson, who hid from me. But I let him know, this your work, this your office, this is my office now. Revolution is a way of life.
They're sort of hinging on Pennsylvania. Some will say Wisconsin, but I think the overall majority of people are worried about Pennsylvania, or they see that as the linchpin. And right now, Trump is leading in the early vote. But remember of course, you guys remember the whole Puerto Rico and it's garbage, and that's going to turn off Latino voters in general because they see Latino people as a monolith like they've done Black people. And I will say that Black people, by and large, have voted like a monolith in years past, but not this year. But what's happening is that Trump is actually getting more of the Latino vote and actually getting more of the Puerto Rican vote. And it's just shocking people. Even far left Politico is sounding the alarm. It says breaking, Politico reports it might be too late for Democrats to win back Pennsylvania Latinos. The Trump campaign has made an audacious play for the fast-growing Puerto Rican and Dominican population in eastern Pennsylvania, and it's paying off. This was just published this morning, and it's literally titled, "It might be too late for Democrats to win back Latinos in Pennsylvania." Again, there's more panic. And speaking of panic, Michael Cohen, this right here is hilarious to me. And we know that these Democrats who say Trump is going to, do all these things to the American people. No, they're worried about themselves. They're worried about he's going to do something to them. They're terrified of this. They're just so scared because they know all of the lawfare and the things that they have tried to do to destroy him has not worked. And they never imagined that he would come back into power. They thought their strategy of trying to destroy him would just take him out, but it didn't. He's actually grown in popularity. Take a listen to what Michael Cohen had to say this morning.
What do you think happens to you if he wins?
Well, I'm out of here. I mean, I'm already working on a foreign passport with a completely different name. I don't know how it's going to work as far as dealing with my wife and my children. I certainly don't want them moving to where I'm looking to go. But I don't think yourself, the president of MSNBC, General Milley, Liz Cheney, how many people has he turned around and said that these are people that I intend to go after if I have the ability to? And the worst is the Supreme Court's recent decision that gave him immunity, presidential immunity. Now he thinks it's not only is it I can do whatever I want, but I can't even be prosecuted. To get out of jail free card solely for the president.
So you're out of here. You'd leave the country.
I have no choice.
What you waiting
Unbelievable
for?
state of being. Michael
I'll still
Cohen,
be available to you, but by remote.
by encrypted remote. Thank you for spending time with us today.
It's always good to see you.
Somewhere. You've been right about everything.
That is hilarious. It's like if you plan to do that, you're actually saying on TV that you plan to do something illegal to try to hide from Trump because you're so scared that he's going to do something to you. Because I don't think it's so much that he's scared Trump is going to do something to him. It's the fact that Michael Cohen is a liar. He's a deceiver. He admitted to stealing from Trump, and he knows that the hammer is going to come down on him legally for all of the things that he's done. But again, look at John Fetterman this morning. I mean, guys, it's just all over the place what he has to say about Pennsylvania, because it's not just the Latinos and the segmented groups, but the average working class person is turning towards Trump. They don't see a leader in Kamala Harris. No one does, except for if you are drinking the Democrat Kool-Aid and voting blue no matter who. Everyone believes that they were living better under Trump. They're not believing that he's racist and misogynist and he hates women and, all of the hoaxes that they tried to use and the misinformation, the disinformation and outright lies that they thought that would be enough to push them over the edge. And it's turned out to be a total collapse.
And I've been saying this, whether it was Biden or then became Harris, I said it's going to be very close. And Trump definitely has a connection with voters here in Pennsylvania. And that's why it's going to be close.
So I have to give credit to John Fetterman. If you haven't seen his clip from Joe Rogan, I actually put that in a previous video. I think I did that 2 days ago where he, admitted to the illegal immigrants changing the electorate. And Joe Rogan brought out like the plan to use these illegals, give them asylum, and so that they can then become, American citizens and be beholden to the Democrat Party. But it's not working. Now, this is a funny one that I want to show you where Don Lemon, he goes out and he's doing these street interviews with people and hoping that, he finds someone that is going to be, voting blue no matter who. They have Trump derangement syndrome. This is what he's banking on. But he gets the surprise that he was not expecting from an undecided swing voter.
I'm undecided yet. I will tell you.
You're
that.
undecided.
I'm undecided.
Wait, how can you be undecided at this point?
Just a lot of things to take into consideration, and I'm going to be making a decision here by Tuesday.
So you're going to go. You're not going to do early or mail in or anything like that.
No, I need the time.
You need the time to figure it out.
I need the time to figure it out.
Yeah, this is a very important county.
Very important state.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, agreed.
How do you think it's going to go? First, the county.
Trump.
And the state.
Trump.
You think so?
I do.
Why?
I'm in the sign industry. I travel all around the state on a weekly basis. And just based on people I've spoken to and the signs I see, I'm a sign guy, I notice signs. And the Trump signs probably outnumber the Harris signs 10-1 throughout the state. So gut feel.
So, okay.
I have nothing to base that on, just gut feel. I'm really just trying to look at the policies, and I'm trying to ignore the personalities to a degree, but it's hard to.
How so? What do you mean by that?
Harris comes across as very likable, almost soft-spoken and relatable to the general public, where I think Trump comes off as just the opposite. But he gives people a sense of strength, that they're craving. And I don't feel that they see that strength in Harris. I think it's very strange for me, somebody like me, to be middle of the road and can't make a decision, because you're either, as I see it, you're one side or the other.
Yeah.
So
do you think that what you're saying, I'm going to be honest with you, as a man, it's like there's a machismo that he has and you are interpreting that as strength, where you can have a quiet strength and be a very strong woman and still accomplish things?
Oh, agreed. Yeah, I do. I mean, and that's honestly the thing about, I'll be honest with you, I voted for Trump the first time around. He turned me off a little bit this time around. So I'm a registered Republican, but I'm not the type of person who just votes Republican across the board. I voted Democrat in the past. It bothers me because he's not strong silent. He's loud, egotistical.
That can mean weakness. That could mean
it could be a cover-up.
Overcompensating. Wow. So you voted for him twice, but now he's turned you off and you don't know.
I don't know.
so goes the country. We don't know what's going to happen. Thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Wow, Don. Like these people live in these bubbles. And I don't even want to say a bubble because a bubble you can see through. You know, I don't want to say a glass house because you can see out, but they live in their little Democrat elitist bubble and they look down on us as average Americans. And they think that we are still drinking their Kool-Aid, that whatever they say, we're just going to lap up their vomit and just say thank you. And we're not doing it anymore. People are turning away from the Democrats because they have no policies that are effective. The policies they do have ruined the economy, have ruined everything sacred that we believe in, and people are feeling the burn. People are feeling how it is to live under Bidenomics. And with Kamala Harris saying that she will do nothing different than what Joe Biden did, we know that's absolutely true. And she keeps trying to throw different policies. They're not even policies. They're just, word salad things that she comes up that, knock around in her head and throws it out there and hoping that that's going to, get someone to vote for her to continue to do this. But take a listen to, this is one of the reasons I see them doing all of these celebrity endorsements, and every celebrity endorsement you hear below, like in the comments and things that people are saying that it's a Diddy party or somebody who is scared of being indicted with Diddy and that they've been forced to do this. But the real thing is that these celebrities are paid millions of dollars in order to endorse Kamala. And I do believe there is some fear in them that I don't know who is on the list, but it's very telling. Listen to what Danica Patrick had to say at a Trump rally.
Now I'm speaking, and I'm not paid to be here. I don't have a teleprompter. I'm winging this right now, everybody. I don't need a telephone. I never went to a Diddy party.
And she said she doesn't need a teleprompter or a phone, which is referring to Cardi B in that ghetto trash speech that she gave. And then she's saying, I don't need all of that. And I haven't been to a Diddy party. But it's not just the Diddy party, guys. If you look at the list of these celebrities that are coming out, it goes deeper than just Diddy. Again, when we talk about pizza, we talk about Gates, we talk about these things, Marina Abramovich. If you guys know, there is a very dark and deep cabal that goes on in Hollywood. And just to give you a snippet of some of that, take a look at this.
You Google Marina Abramovich's name in Spirit Cooking, and you will find hundreds of pictures of Marina Abramovich's events where they will have, for example, a cake that looks like a human being, and they'll depict human cannibalism. And they claim they're not engaging in cannibalism. And you will find A-list actors and famous politicians and other very famous and successful, powerful business people at her events. They literally have food that look like human beings on dinner tables.
And they need all these celebrity endorsements, or they think they do. It didn't really work out for Hillary Clinton, but they're back to their old playbook because they have a weak, inept, empty candidate who is it's just so fake. It's just bizarre that there would be any enthusiasm for her. Most people are not voting for Kamala because there's nothing to vote for. They're voting against Trump. They just hate Trump. So whoever the Democrats put up, well, that's who they're going to vote for. They wanted to vote for half-dead, zombie Biden before and kept telling us nothing's wrong with him. And these are the people that we should trust. These same people then installed her. But take a look at how cringe she is. It's just corny. Like she doesn't evoke anything presidential or dignified or something to believe in.
Thank you. Let's vote. Let's get out the 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 vote. Let's win. All right, let's get to work. 24 hours to go.
And speaking of cringe and desperation, I showed you guys the ad that piggybacked on Michelle Obama telling women to vote behind their husband's back and vote for Kamala, and that he will never know. Then they did an ad that said the same thing, showed these women who were, they decided to vote behind their husband's back. Look at this cringe ad for men now, because they realize they need more men in their coalition, not just women who are hell-bent on abortion to vote for them, because they're not getting the turnout that they need. Now this ad, this cringe fest of an ad they put up, because now this is going to turn the tide, and this is how men think when they go to vote.
Come on, boys, let's make America great again. It's your turn, buddy.
Before you cast your vote in this election, think about how it'll impact the people you care about the most.
Daddy!
Remember, you can vote any way you want, and no one will ever know.
Do your patriotic duty.
You bet I did, brother. What happens in the booth stays in the booth. Vote Harris Walls. Paid for by Vote Common Good.
Someone screenshotted the phone from that ad, and the time says 420, which is a nod to, marijuana, to weed, which she now has thrown out. She wants to legalize weed after it was supposed to be under the black male agenda and making black men weed mascots. That didn't quite work out. So now she's announced that she's, made this big push for it. So 420. But look at this guy's family. Like, who are these people? This isn't even his family. There's like what? And this is just cringe. A lot of people said that that's his wife's boyfriend, and he already voted for Trump. Guys, make sure you're subscribed. I will be back later today to give you
Over the past few hours, Trump has been musing about violence against the press, saying that he shouldn't have left office, and mixing up what state he is speaking in, which is all quite the closing message. So I've said it before, and I will keep saying it. Nobody knows how this thing is going to turn out. But I think it is safe to say that one campaign does seem to be closing this thing out very strong, and one seems to be losing oxygen fast.
All right, guys, so it's the day before the election, and I am ready to make some solid predictions about what I think is going to happen, who I think is going to win. But before we get into that, I have to basically explain why I am making the prediction that I'm going to make, because the mainstream liberal media and the hoaxes that they put out over the last week or so would make the average person believe that things are not going well for Trump. Okay. However, the data does not match the reality that Democrats are trying to manufacture. Okay. And that's what I want people to understand going into election day, that you're going to see a whole lot of hopium on the mainstream liberal media outlets pretending as if Kamala Harris is doing better than she actually is, and that so many voters are turned off by Trump and his comments and a joke that was told by a comedian at his Madison Square Garden rally, because they want to manufacture a reality that right now, according to the data, does not exist, which is that Kamala Harris has such strong momentum going into this election because she has Obama level enthusiasm, right? Voters are so enthusiastic about voting for Kamala Harris.
Those were lies.
When, again, that's just simply not the case. Okay. The first hoax I want to talk about here from the liberal media is this idea that Trump has lost a significant amount of the Puerto Rican vote, specifically in the state of Pennsylvania, due to a joke from a comedian that was made at the Madison Square Garden rally. Again, if you listen to the mainstream liberal media and them out here interviewing random Puerto Ricans who were probably going to vote for Kamala anyways, again, you would think that Trump essentially has lost all of the Puerto Rican vote. Take a look.
Station. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Martinez. Just give me the download on the reaction, because people don't realize, like, Allentown is to Puerto Ricans as Miami is to Cubans. It's a very, very heavily Puerto Rican town. What's been the reaction to this joke?
For the last 3 days, we've been taking nonstop calls and comments from people upset, pissed off to the fact that, number one, this was said, and number two, with every hour that goes by, people are getting more and more upset because they just can't stand or understand why Trump hasn't said anything about it, why he hasn't distanced himself, why he hasn't denied it or apologized. This could have been fixed real quick. He could have said, listen, I'm sorry. I don't know this guy. I don't appreciate what he said. I don't agree what he said. And done. Now 3-4 days almost later, silence, nothing.
Are you Puerto Rican?
Yes, I am.
You are. Did anything that happened at Madison Square Garden last week?
Yes. Yes, it did affect. Yes, it did affect my decision a lot.
Do you think it's going to make a difference in the election?
Yes, it's going to make a difference.
Do you think that the Puerto Rican community could
absolutely
decide who's going to be president?
Yes. As a female, we were already leaning more to Kamala when it has to do with women's rights. So now you just pushed us even more. Now you push the Puerto Rican women even more.
You said you were leaning towards him to vote, and now you're like,
Wow. I didn't want to say so, but no, he doesn't have my vote.
A little bit more and went to an AOC rally yesterday. And I want to tell you, you were right. First of all, every Puerto Rican in Pennsylvania has.
I wish one of my daughters would tell me, and they grown, I got the right to do whatever I want with my body. I'm what? God, throw holy water on them. You sinner. Shame on you. Don't you shame me like that.
Has heard about the garbage comment. They all know about it. 2, they're all pissed about it. I mean, again, you were right. I mean, there's this real pride thing in Puerto Rico, and there's like nothing more that Trump could have done to offend Puerto Ricans than to describe their country as garbage.
Yeah. So again, you know, if you're listening to the mainstream level media and watching Don Lemon videos, which again is probably not a lot of people. Okay. Again, they try to manufacture this fake outrage over this joke. When the reality is that they were interviewing people who already were going to vote for Kamala Harris, right? They pretended as if they was open to voting for Trump because everybody knows that Puerto Ricans who are actually voting for Trump are not going to be offended by a joke, right? Everybody knows that. In fact, I think it's actually more offensive to assume that Puerto Ricans are going to change their vote over a joke, right? I think that's actually the most offensive thing about this, okay? So lo and behold, we have a new poll from Univision that came out showing that Trump not only hasn't lost any support, but he's actually gained support among Puerto Ricans, specifically in Pennsylvania from 2020. Okay, he has gained 3 points and Kamala has lost 3 points, right? So you're talking about a 6-point swing from 2020. Now, again, that may not seem like a lot, right? But you got to understand, a lot of those Puerto Ricans were already Democrats, right? Largely Democrats, okay? Which is why, again, most of the Puerto Ricans that were being interviewed were Democrats that were offended by this. Of course, Democrats are going to be offended by it. They're Democrats, okay? They're liberals. But when you talk about affecting the outcome of an election, right? You should be seeing a significant swing in which Trump is actually losing support, which, again, there's no data whatsoever to suggest that is the case. In fact, again, Trump has gained support. So again, it seems as if this joke offended Puerto Ricans, it didn't offend them enough to drop his numbers in support below that of where Puerto Ricans were supporting him in 2020. Furthermore, they tried to extend this to make it offensive towards the whole Latino community, not just the Puerto Rican community. And it turns out that hasn't really affected him with the Latino community as a whole either, which is what they admitted on MSNBC.
Trump has faced widespread backlash for his comments about Puerto Rico, but he's continued to gain support among Hispanic voters. An Economist YouGov poll that ended after the Madison Square Garden rally shows Vice President Harris leading Trump by 12 points among Latinos, less than half the advantage she had in September.
Yeah, so much for all those pissed off Latinos and Puerto Ricans that are supposed to be hate voting against Trump. Again, we're just not seeing that in the data. But another thing I want to address, again, is this idea that is going to be pushed in the mainstream level media that, again, there's such a strong enthusiasm for Kamala Harris on the ground. And there's so many people that can't wait to line up and vote for her so that she can become the first woman to be president of the United States. Again, they are trying to manufacture a reality that there is Obama-level enthusiasm for Kamala Harris, which is something that we've heard throughout her whole campaign.
And joining us now, the chair of the Democratic Party from Wisconsin, Ben Wickler. Okay, Ben, tell us what you're seeing and hearing on the ground. What's going to be the difference there?
I'm joining you from Ozaukee County. It's a northern suburb county of Milwaukee. This is one of the places with the biggest swing over the last few cycles. Jody Haber-Sinekin on track to flip a state Senate district in the most expensive state Senate race in Wisconsin history. And here in Ozaukee County and all over Wisconsin, and I've been in every corner of this state in the last few days, there is explosive, propulsive energy on the ground. People knocking on every door in a community that we're targeting for turnout and then going back for a second pass already. And what we're seeing that translate to is an explosion in early votes cast in person, in same-day registrations, and in vote by mail ballots being returned. So in the final stretch, we have this enormous army of volunteers ready to go. We're calling millions of phones. We've knocked on hundreds of thousands of doors, and we can translate all of that into a focus just on the people that haven't voted yet and push our turnout even higher. Democrats are feeling good in Wisconsin in the final stretch.
Yeah, so this is the type of hopium that you're going to get hit with for the next 48 hours, right, as the election takes place. And basically what they're doing is that they are trying to motivate Democrats to get out and vote, because Democrats have a huge turnout problem going into election day, right? The reality is that Democrats are just not showing up to vote, right? At least not compared to 2020, okay? And that is a big problem for Democrats, because not only are they not showing up to vote, but also Republicans are showing up into early voting. And again, they tell you that we should not draw any conclusions from early voting. However, would they really be saying that if the Democrats were outperforming their 2020 numbers this year? Would they really be saying we shouldn't draw any conclusions from it? I don't think so, right? But the Trump campaign has released this bombshell memo, essentially highlighting this huge problem of Democrat turnout, when, again, Kamala Harris is supposed to be this game-changing candidate that has Obama-level enthusiasm, except, again, when it comes to people actually voting, we're not seeing that, okay? So let's actually look here. In Arizona, urban turnout is down 385,000 votes compared to this point in 2020. Female turnout is down 170,000 compared to 2020. Rural turnout is up. Now, here's the thing, right? We've been told time and time again that, oh, the gender gap is a problem, except the GOP is actually performing better in the early vote when it comes to the so-called gender gap, in the sense that the gap is not as large for female turnout as it was in 2020, right? Which definitely bodes well for the GOP. And you're seeing the same pattern in essentially every single swing state, which is being outlined here by the Trump campaign. Okay, rural turnout is up. Urban turnout is down. Female turnout is down, right? That is essentially what is happening, which, again, would make logical sense, because Kamala Harris was installed as the Democrat Party candidate. Like, nobody voted for her, and she did not have the ability to excite the Democrat Party base in 2019. Why would anybody think that she has the ability to do so in 2024? Also, on top of that, there's not nearly as much Trump derangement this time around in this election, because Trump is not in office, right? So what Democrats campaigned on in 2020, which motivated a lot of people, the primary motivator was not Biden, it was Trump. Because at the time of the pandemic, everybody was essentially blaming Trump for every COVID death and the current state of the country, even though it wasn't Trump's fault. And I think that's what actually motivated people to vote. Now, fast forward 4 years, people realized, that orange guy, his economy wasn't that bad, right? Things were not that bad under Trump. In fact, things were actually pretty good. And the Trump derangement is just not a motivating factor anymore. Well, it's not as much as a motivating factor as it was in 2020. And Kamala Harris, again, there's nothing exciting about her. It doesn't matter what the media says. You can't put lipstick on a pig, okay? It's still a pig. So again, what you're seeing here is that across a ton of swing states, like, for example, Arizona, the early vote, the GOP is up, okay, compared to 2020, in which the Democrats actually had a better advantage over the GOP, right? So again, what you would have to believe in order to think that Kamala Harris was actually doing well, which is that a significant amount of these votes either are the GOP essentially using up their votes, or a significant amount of these GOP votes are actually Kamala votes. That's what you would have to believe, okay? And I'm not saying that's not possible. I'm just saying that's what you have to believe. But again, to be up 100, almost 200,000 votes, early votes, compared to Democrats being up 20,000 votes in 2020, in which Democrats barely won Arizona in 2020. And I say that with an asterisk, of course. Again, this is not good for Democrats because historically speaking, Republicans vote more on election day. Now, again, the copium here from Democrats is that, well, all these independent votes, right? Oh, well, they're breaking for Kamala.
What this is showing is that the Trump momentum has overtaken the little bit that the Democrats had going for them, and that was early voting. But what we should know was they should be down. They're down with blacks. They're down with Latinos. They're down with the young population. That's their bread and butter. They supposed to be losing on early voting, and they're supposed to lose bad tomorrow. That's serious business. No hanky-panky tomorrow when we don't see it anywhere that they're gaining momentum. And remember, if blacks, Mexicans, and the youth are not with you fully in mass support like usually, it's not supposed to be nowhere in hell they can win.
Kamala Harris, right? They're going to break for Kamala Harris. These independent women are going to break for Kamala Harris. Okay, but again, you're seeing the same pattern over and over and over again. Like, for example, in Pennsylvania, you see that in 2020, they had a firewall of 1.1 million votes, which means they had 1.1 million votes more than the Republicans going into election day. Now, this year, they only have 409,000 more votes, which means that on election day, Republicans have less votes to make up for, because again, most Republicans vote on election day. Okay. And again, these results are concerning, and Democrats are being asked about these results and whether or not they are a true concern for them. And, you know, hey, they really don't have much to say about it. They can't come out here and tell you with a straight face that they feel good about what's currently happening with the early voting numbers. Take a look.
Okay, so you said that you're optimistic about Pennsylvania. Here's something that may cause you concern. Early voting, 2024, Democrats had put in 971,615, Republicans 571,725. Compared to 2020, you're down 42%. Republicans are down 8%. And here is what Jim Messina said on Sunday with Jen Psaki on MSNBC about the early vote. Listen here.
What's their biggest concern right now if you're the Harris team?
Well, look, I think it's a couple things. The early vote numbers are a little scary, and you and I have been texting back and forth. Republicans didn't do what they did last time. Last time Trump said don't early vote, and so they didn't. Republicans do have an advantage in early vote numbers. When the early vote come in, it's going to look a little bit different than 2020, and that's scary.
So he says it's scary what he's seeing in the early vote. What do you say?
I say that I hope folks will get out there and vote if you haven't already. Exercise your right to be a part of our democracy. And to your viewers, remember, we won't have final results here in Pennsylvania
of course, but does it
for
concern
several
you?
days.
Does it concern you in the way it concerns Jim Messina?
Well, sure. I'm concerned about this election all over the country. It is going to be razor thin. We're going to be working on it until the last hour. Part of why I've been campaigning across Pennsylvania and encouraging people to come out and vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz is because I think this is very close.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that the election isn't close, but I personally think that if the election was held today, Trump would have probably 65% chance of winning. I think realistically, that is where his odds are. Okay. And I'm actually now ready to make predictions for you guys, because I guess when you're in the game of politics, punditry, you got to make these predictions. Now, here's the thing. I am going to give a disclaimer, and I'm obviously going to hedge before giving these predictions. These predictions are based off what I think is the most likely scenario based off the data today. I'm not saying that Kamala Harris can't win. I'm not saying it's impossible, because obviously, you know, hey, there could be some shenanigans, but tossing aside the shenanigans, in order for Kamala Harris to win, Democrats are going to have to buck election day trends, in the sense that, one, they're going to have to turn out in historic numbers on election day,
which they not.
And Republican men specifically are going to have to not show up to vote, which again is highly unlikely. Furthermore, they're going to have a lot of liberal women and a lot of pro-choice Republican women coming out in droves voting for Kamala Harris. Okay. And again, this was part of the reason why that Iowa poll dropped. Okay. That Iowa poll that the mainstream media is making a big deal about, showing Kamala up +3 or 4 or something like that. Something crazy to think about, right? But that poll, the reason why she was up was because of women, right? Because of the issue of democracy and abortion. I really do believe that that poll was put out there as hopium for the Kamala Harris campaign, because at this point, that is what they need the most. They need hopium, right? They need a large injection of, hey, we can win this, okay? That we have a chance at winning. Look at this Iowa poll that usually is very reliable, and we're going to put this out here and say that these women are fired up to vote for Kamala Harris because of democracy and abortion, right? Iowa is going to flip blue because of democracy and abortion. Again, this is the narrative that is being put out there in the media, right? This is a narrative. I wouldn't be surprised if Ann Seltzer was paid a large amount of money to put that poll out. She's been doing her laps on the mainstream liberal media, explaining her poll in ways that are incoherent and just don't really make sense, okay? I wouldn't be surprised because, listen, if it worked and Kamala ends up winning, Ann Seltzer will be praised as a hero amongst the liberal media, right? Because, again, she injected the hopium that they needed in order to help Kamala Harris get that turnout from women that she's going to need on election day in order to win, okay? That is
what they was doing, is trying to rig the election with all kind of BS all around the country and make their people feel like they still had hope because they knew the truth. Like I said, they were losing all swing states, that Latinos was surging for Trump. The youth surging for Trump. Blacks been surging. Black males and some black women, they've been surging in Trump direction. The Democrats needed that, so they couldn't tell the truth. They had to make people think, oh no, we're still winning. They couldn't go a whole week because that was gonna kill pride. That was gonna kill their people's, you know what I'm saying, their motivation to make them think they're gonna win, and then it was all gonna collapse.
Is, I think, what is currently happening, right? And if Trump wins, then they will honestly just forget about it and say, oh, well, you know, hey, it was just one poll in which she was off, not a big deal. And also, again, she probably got paid heavily, right? I'm just saying, like, if Trump wins, I'm almost convinced, I'm almost certain that she was paid to put that out there as hopium. So let's get into my map here. And first, we're going to start off with the states that I am most confident in, right? The states that Trump basically is performing the strongest in, the Sun Belt. So Georgia, I think Trump is going to pick up Georgia and North Carolina. One of the main reasons is because in the early vote numbers, we're seeing that the black voter turnout is abysmal, right? It is terrible. Now, turnout overall is up, specifically in Georgia. But again, it's not among blacks. It's among basically Republicans and everybody else, right? And if black voters aren't showing up for Kamala Harris, then that is going to be a problem in Georgia. It's going to be a problem in North Carolina. And it's probably going to be a problem in Pennsylvania as well, too, because Pennsylvania has a large black population in Philadelphia, right? So I personally think that Trump is going to pick up North Carolina and Georgia and Arizona as well, too, because he's polling pretty well in Arizona. I think Arizona is actually the strongest place that Trump is polling in right now going into the election in regards to the swing states. So I feel pretty confident in those three. Now, Pennsylvania, I personally think is going to flip red. Although Trump doesn't necessarily need Pennsylvania, if he gets North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona, which again are the states that he needs the most, if he picks up Pennsylvania, it's basically over, right? And I think that it's likely that he will be. And one of the reasons why is because I think that the union vote, the blue-collar working class vote is going to break for Trump. And I think, honestly, that's going to put him over the top in Pennsylvania. Now, again, if he wins those four states, it doesn't really matter what happens in Wisconsin and Nevada and Michigan. But just for the sake of argument, I'm probably going to say that Wisconsin likely is going to go for Trump as well, too, which would put him at 291. Michigan, I will give Kamala Harris Michigan, although historically speaking, the blue wall moves as a whole. So if Pennsylvania goes red, Wisconsin goes red, it's likely that Michigan is going to go red. And I think that in Nevada, that's pretty much a toss-up. Doesn't really matter that much because there's only 6 votes. But I think possibly that is going to go for Trump. And I think this is the scenario that you're probably going to be looking at on election day. But easily, this could also be Michigan red as well, too. We could be looking at 312 votes. But I think that this year, that trend in which the blue wall kind of moves together, I think that's going to break. I actually think that possibly Kamala Harris could pick up Michigan. But that's just me being generous towards Kamala Harris at this point, because I think that's the swing state she's performing the best in. That's the one that she has the best chance of winning. But you know that Pennsylvania is a problem for Kamala because she's spending the last day of campaigning in Pennsylvania. I think she has like 4 events today in Pennsylvania, right? And she's going very hard on Pennsylvania because of what we went over in this video in regards to early voting turnout, right? Turnout is down, enthusiasm is down. So again, she's rallying in Pennsylvania because she basically has to win that state, right? If Pennsylvania goes red, again, it basically makes it very hard for Trump to lose, okay? Also, something else that I would watch out for is Virginia possibly flipping red, okay? And then look out for New Hampshire as well, too. Again, unlikely, but I think it's actually more likely that Virginia flips red or New Hampshire flips red than for the scenario that Democrats are hoping for, which is for Iowa to flip blue, which, I mean, at that point, I mean, you know, if this holds, right, they can have Iowa, but I don't think that's going to happen, okay? I don't think that Iowa is going to flip blue. I'm just saying that it's probably more likely that Trump is going to flip one of these blue states, Virginia, New Hampshire, than it is for Kamala Harris to flip Iowa. And this is where I'm at this point, okay? The day before the election, I got Trump winning 297 to Democrats losing 241. And I think that this is the most likely scenario. The only thing that I think can change this for Kamala Harris is, again, if women, liberal women, come out in droves, historically speaking, on election day and vote for Kamala Harris, and also pro-choice Republican women as well, too, the ones that have already voted or they're coming out on election day, coming out and voting for Kamala Harris in droves. That is the only scenario in which I see Kamala Harris winning. If Kamala Harris ultimately ends up...
They keep saying that. There's no way the liberal women could make up, once again, for the youth vote that they lost, for the Latino vote that they're losing, and for the black male vote and a lot of black women vote that have walked away from the Democratic Party. You ain't gonna tell me no liberal white women. See, this is now that's leaving room to rig the election. Hell no. Any of that hanky panky is election rigging. That's serious business. I don't want to hear women came out and drove, because they want to say that. It was Roe v. Wade which brought her over the top. The first woman president won off of women. Nah, hell no, you didn't.
Up winning, it's going to be because of that. That is going to be the sole reason. It's going to be abortion, and that's it, right? That is her only chance of winning. But
if that's the case,
historically speaking, Trump has underperformed in the polls going into the election. He has overperformed on the day of the election. And there's no reason in my mind to believe that that's not going to happen again. Even the New York Times came out and said, yeah,
I'm not talking about no spooky place. I'm talking about it's going to be real hell here if that's what it's going to be. Because they're going to win because of abortion. Are you fucking nuts?
Have a hard time polling Trump supporters. So the polls are probably going to underestimate Trump support again. I'm just saying, if Kamala wins, it's going to be very strange because she would have to buck so many trends. Okay, so many things will have to go right in her favor that, again, just historically speaking, doesn't really happen in order for her to win at this point. And I just don't see it happening. But then again, you just never know. This is not a perfect science. But the overall odds, I would say Trump, 65% chance of winning as of right now. Kamala Harris, 40% chance of winning. When it comes to the popular vote, I give Trump a slight advantage there as well, too. He may win it by a point or two, or maybe it might be effectively tied. Wouldn't be surprised if Kamala wins the popular vote and Trump wins the electoral college. That also could happen as well, too. But as of right now, I give Trump a slight edge in the popular vote along with winning the electoral college. We will see what happens. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly,
black. I haven't voted yet, but I plan on voting on election day, and I plan on voting for Donald Trump.
Look, man, the Democrats are doing badly, and there are a lot of reasons for it. Here goes a great example.
But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
That's right, folks. The President of the United States is talking about smacking men in the ass. And I know what you're thinking. Like, Tim Black, did you doctor that? No, he said it. That's your president. All of a sudden, those people that were saying that maybe Biden was railroaded, they're like, sometimes you got to railroad people. Sometimes it's railroaded, sometimes it's the right call. It's just who he ended up with is horrible. I'm just saying, man, in what context is this a good idea? Does he know that sound bites exist?
But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass. But
I don't think I want to hear that no matter who you are. President of the United States or president of the Rotary Club or president of the Crossing Guards Union. I don't think I want to hear you saying that. No? All right. He's not alone.
I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
Kamala did what Kamala always does. She just put her head down and she went to work.
Oh, I'm sorry. How'd they get in there? You know, I've been hearing a lot of talk about how great Doug Emhoff is. It's like the poster child for supporting his wife. Too bad his hearing don't work. Yeah, I didn't know Doug had a hearing problem. Because he must not have heard himself say this when he said it. You know what I'm saying? Like, how could you say this? Did he read this? He's reading it. Someone wrote that on a teleprompter. Maybe Doug was thinking, we're above this. Bing, bang, boom, bing.
As it is, the dancing, the going to the wrestling matches, going on.
I'm leaning towards Trump.
And why is that?
A lot of the stuff Kamala says is kind of like what Trump has said, like no taxes on tips was something that was kind of reiterated by Trump beforehand.
Oh, you caught that, did you? Hey, you caught what she was doing when she was taking policies that Trump had and said, oh, that sounds good. I'll take that. I'll absorb that. I'll absorb. In fact, she's done a lot of that. Like that's been Kamala's whole thing, her whole political career on the national stage. It's been her absorbing other people's policies when they're hot. And then like shedding them when they're not. She did the same thing in 2019 when she absorbed all of Bernie Sanders' policies. Sort of like John Carpenter's The Thing in that way. Yeah, because The Thing, I love that movie. So anyway, so the extraterrestrial being or whatever this is, right? It will absorb you and then it can mimic you and become you. And people won't be able to tell the difference between you and the thing. Because that's the thing. That's what the thing does. It becomes these other people. It looks like it's these other people when it's really itself. And then it morphs into someone else. And that's what Kamala's done. So right now, Kamala, 4 years ago, she was Bernie. Then she went back to Kamala because she got caught. She had to shed Bernie. Then now she's Trump. She absorbed Trump. Absorbing the border wall now. Now she's like, hey, you know, I think the border wall is a good idea. 5 years ago, she hated the border. She said there was no such thing as borders. There should be no borders. There's no such thing as a person illegally entering a country. It's good to see that people recognize what's going on.
Kind of reiterated by Trump beforehand. She's just kind of been caught up in a lot of lies.
I haven't voted yet, but I plan on voting on election day, and I plan on voting for Donald Trump. I always voted democratically, but due to my research, I recently changed my mind, Republican, from moving forward.
Obviously, the Russians have held his family hostage. Yeah, obviously that's what's going on, man, because any black man who decides to vote for Trump obviously must be, influenced by bots or Russians or Chinese or something. You know what they've been telling us? There's no way that this black man could decide for himself what he wants to do and not choose the Democrats, because that's what black people are supposed to do. Black people are supposed to go Democrat. And in fact, that we had a black woman, now a black man, going, no, I'm thinking for myself. That's got to tick off Democrats, man. I thought we were all created equal. So why is it that white guys get to vote for whoever the hell they want, and black guys got to vote Democrat? And if people are saying that black guys are choosing not to vote Democrat, you say it's a hoax.
Trump has made gains with the Black and Latino vote, especially on immigration.
I'm very disappointed. I don't believe anymore on the Democrat Party because they promise and promise and they never do anything. So I'm voting for Donald Trump.
So President Trump has basically said he'll deport millions and millions of people.
I know a lot of times when I bring up the Latino brothers, will be clipped like this. Black folks be like, hey, Tito, don't be doing that. We don't got no black-brown coalition. That shit don't exist. It's not about a coalition. It's about truth. I just like the fact to point out the fact that we ain't the only people that are tired of the Democratic Party's BS. Martha Raddatz is going to go at him with the whole immigration angle. You know, try to guilt him like they would do black folks. What about Central Park 5? You know, she can't say that to him because he's Latino, right? So he's not supposed to care about the Central Park 5. See how they do racial politics?
He'll deport millions and millions of people.
Well, he said that the first time, too, when he was president.
So you don't think he's going to do that? You think he's actually going to help people who are here?
He go after criminals.
So you think he's just going to deport people who are criminals? Or
yes.
Here's this guy coming down the escalator, a rich guy, married 3 times, pretty foul mouth. What was it and what is it about him?
Has he made mistakes? Oh my goodness, yes. But I do believe that his heart's in the right place for me. How many presidents, how many politicians have come out on the stage and hugged the American flag?
Probably everyone after this. Probably all of them after this. I mean, is that all it took, Johnson? Hey, you know what? That hugging of the American flag does help. I don't think it's a coincidence that every black conservative YouTube channel has the American flag in the background. They be holding on to the American flag. When black people do it, they be like, see? I knew he was one of them.
That really means something to me.
You've also...
What I talk to young men about who might be taken by the, fun side of Donald Trump, such as it is, the dancing, the going to the wrestling matches, going on the podcasts, and
yeah, fun stuff. How dare you like people that are fun? Hey, Doug, that's called charismatic. That's called, being outgoing, personable. Kamala should have tried it. It's a good idea. People that run for public office tend to have to get out in front of the public and do things. What do you tell them, Doug? What do you tell them? Mr. Personality, Doug. But I heard you got a pretty good left.
Fun side of Donald Trump, such as it is, the dancing, the going to the wrestling matches, going on the podcasts, and trying to portray himself as someone who he really is. And I think Cardi B called this out and said it's just all a hustle.
Mm-hmm. And well, Cardi B's a hustler. Hustle, recognize hustle. Doug, don't you know that politics is a hustle? Simone Sanders, I know you're not going to sit there and act like your ass ain't been hustling. Simone Sanders went from Bernie Sanders to Joe Biden to, shit, what did you do? MSNBC? I don't know. Simone Sanders, you're a hustler too. But I don't get it, man. Don't these people realize to be a politician, that's part of the job, is you got to hustle. You got to interact with people. You got to put your best foot forward. You cannot be an introverted, in a shell of yourself, word salad queen, telling long, boring stories no one relates to. Hey, folks, did you hear the story that Trump told about that trash truck? Did you hear the story that Donald Trump told about that trash truck trick or troll? Oh, guys, you got to hear this.
So this outfit, is
when he called us all garbage. How stupid. What a stupid word. That blows deplorable away, don't you think? Of course, I thought irredeemable when she said deplorable or irredeemable. I thought irredeemable was actually worse, but deplorable seemed to catch up. But this garbage stuff blows it away. So I'm in this beautiful plane. I'm enjoying myself. Have a wonderful suit on. And one of my people came in and said, "Sir, you know, the word garbage is the hottest thing right now out there. The hottest thing out there. Sir, would you like to drive a garbage truck?"
Folks, Donald Trump's retelling of how he got that trash truck, the process of getting that trash truck, the actual doing of the filming of that trash truck episode or moment in time, folks, that was like, he's like a top 10 comedian in our country right now. Real talk.
Now, we're about, 30 minutes from landing. We had to do this pretty quick. I said, it's sort of cool, though, isn't it? Because, and I said, I think that's okay, but, I don't feel comfortable wearing a suit. And they pulled up this garbage truck. I don't know how the hell they did it so fast. I have very capable people. They put a big sign on the truck. Did you see it? I think they showed it. Yeah. And then they said, "Sir, we have a vest." I said, "Well, should I leave my suit on and put it over the vest?" But that doesn't look very good, right? That doesn't look good. So I said, "All right, look, let me take it off." And then I actually said, I climbed into the truck, but so I said, "How the hell do you get into this truck? It's way up high. It's a big one." This was a beauty. I said, "You didn't have to buy it that big, right? You have to get it that big?" They brought this brand new, gorgeous truck, wonderful driver. He looked like Cary Grant in his prime. You know who that is? This beautiful driver. And he drove that big thing up. And I said, "Man, this is bad, because now I have all the cameras are all what? Look at all the fake news. They were most of them. No, most of them, many of them were there." And I'm saying, oh boy, one little mistake with these guys and your political career's over. You can't even. So I said, man, if I don't get up there, this is going to be very embarrassing. These stupid people, they'll say, he's cognitively and physically impaired. And I can't do that when I'm alongside of this great athlete. I got to get up to that. So look, the first stair is like up here. I'm saying, shit. So I had the adrenaline going and I made it. I made it. And then I gave a little news conference from the front of they asked their wise guy questions and everything. And then we drove about 2 feet. I got out, got into the plane.
The man's truly gifted. Truly gifted. No takes, no edits, straight through. It was that good. I'm just saying, even Doug has to admit that Donald Trump has this thing. He tries to discredit it, but he has to admit it's real.
What I talk to young men about who might be taken by the, fun side of Donald Trump, such as it is.
And that's one of the reasons why I believe that Kamala Harris is in so much trouble. I know people want to say it's all about policy, and it is to a certain degree. But if they really, really liked Kamala, they would probably overlook a lot of the policy failures of the Democratic Party or of the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration. But being as though she cannot get out of her own way, she can't project the type of personable type of character or personality that would kind of camouflage some of her faults. Be that, the fact that wings cost $100, I don't know. that you almost got to sell your children to be able to afford ox sales, and then you have ox sales with no kids. That's that good. So, yeah, she would need to be able to mitigate that somehow. Somehow you got to try to make up for it. By being such an interesting, down-to-earth type person, I mean, she is no Shirley Ralph. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, Doug knows that more than anybody. Don't you, Doug?
So what I'm trying to implore young men in particular to do the research. He's not your friend.
This idea that the Democratic Party is somehow more in touch with working class people doesn't ring true. I never felt Kamala Harris. As many times as Kamala Harris has told this story about her being raised middle class, I've never felt any type of kinship with her at all. And I wasn't raised middle class, I was raised lower middle class. But I don't feel any type of connection to her in that way. I mean, maybe I'm tripping, maybe you do. Maybe you love the story about her and her mother working till she was in high school and was able to buy a home, you know, or something, or the small business person who lived down the hall and took care of her, was like a second mom. Why do I know that story? But there's nothing in that story that connects me, that makes me feel like, you know, that, oh, I relate to her, or this makes me like her more. It just doesn't. Because she tells a part of it, but the connective tissue of the story just doesn't land. Doug, you know this. Doug knows better than we all do. It's like the Democrats are desperate. The Democratic Party is desperate. Why would you be talking like this if you thought things were going well?
Wake up, everybody. Welcome into Redacted. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And on the show, we cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores, or we help you sift through all of the propaganda and the last-minute spin from all of these, the corporate media and the corrupt politicians. So we're going to get to a lot of stories today on the show, of course. Election day is upon us, but we're going to be looking at a lot of the fraud stories that have come out over the past 24 to 48 hours across the country. In addition to which, we're seeing a lot of problems right now with military members that don't have access to absentee ballots, as well as a whole host of issues across the United States, including the National Guard being mobilized in a number of states ready for action for election turmoil. Will we see unrest in the next 48 hours?
Interestingly enough, that was something the Obama administration failed to do, which was get overseas military their absentee ballots. That's funny, right? Why does that happen under Democratic presidents? Could it be because military tends to vote Republicans? Maybe, but it is part of the Voting Rights Act. They are supposed to be able to vote.
You would think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Election day is on us, you guys. It's within minutes, hours. I can't take it. Can you let me know how you're coping? What else are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about FEMA. So
I'm screaming.
Yeah, you're screaming. That's okay. We're all screaming. We're all a little like on edge right now, I think. But FEMA funds, you know, why didn't we have enough money allocated for people in Hurricane Helene's path or other areas of destruction across the United States? Well, it turns out, thanks to some great reporting out of Chicago, a lot of the FEMA money in Chicago and Illinois has been redistributed for illegal immigrants. Yes, to house illegals in the state of Illinois. Unbelievable. We're going to bring you that story in moments.
Plus, a new pandemic treaty is upon us. It is like the World Health Organization, which seems to be dead in its tracks, thankfully. But that's okay, because Congress has another initiative. It's for North America, but it does call for vaccine passports and a monitoring of your social media and communications monitoring. We're going to take a look at it because here you go. It's what do you call it? Like different clothed, wolf in sheep's clothing, like a same beast,
on a pig.
different costume kind of thing. There's a saying for this. It eludes me at the moment.
Yeah, we got a lot of news to get to, including, yes, I saw someone in the chat just say, rip Peanut. Rip Peanut the squirrel.
Yeah.
Yes, justice for Fred and Peanut, Redcap Goblin says. I mean, can you...
Why do you think the squirrel is more popular than the raccoon? I
think people aren't big fans of raccoons. You know, they're used to seeing them like out in their trash and stuff.
Yeah.
Remember, like Peanut had a 1 million follower TikTok and the raccoon didn't. So
yeah.
Oh,
he was.
okay.
Yeah, that
he
could
was
be.
world
People
famous.
like, yeah, more into the squirrels. But it's amazing to me that we can literally euthanize squirrels in the United States. That's what Democrats are focused on right now, rather than protecting our citizens and making sure that illegal immigrants aren't taking over apartment complexes across the United States.
Now, I would like to point out that this is a prophecy come true from the Wizard of Oz. That whole story started on authoritarian government taking away the animal. Did anybody else miss this?
Yes.
Here we are. You
Toto,
want that?
We'll
Okay.
explain that. Toto was biting
Yes. So the Wicked Witch of the West was government taking away the dog because she said the dog was bothersome and she went to take the dog, and it's all snowballs from there. The Wizard of Oz is it's a warning. It's supposed to be a post-apocalyptic warning, right? About what authoritarian government and specifically the Federal Reserve can do. And we're here. We're here.
It's real. All right. Well, we got a lot of news to get to today. I mean, we have a lot of things we're going to give you today and a lot of stories you probably haven't heard. So we're going to get to those in a second. But we want to thank our show sponsor today, our friends at Lear Capital, because I know we talk a lot about gold on this show, but I'm telling you what, silver is a fantastic investment right now. What is going to happen to the U.S. dollar? What is going to happen? We just had Ron Paul on the show last week, who talks about the coming collapse of the U.S. dollar. Go back and watch my interview with him. He says we need to end the Federal Reserve right now. He's not sure exactly what a Trump administration, if Trump gets reelected, would do. But one thing is clear, the U.S. dollar is declining around the world with the rise of the BRICS currencies. Every government currency in world history has collapsed. Every one of them. What makes you think the U.S. dollar is any different? Of course, he's been pushing, Ron Paul, for many, many years. We need to return to a gold standard. He's encouraging Americans to buy gold, buy silver, buy precious metals. And we are big advocates of that. And I'm telling you right now, even just having a little bit of your savings not tied to U.S. dollars, but tied to precious metals, it's great that it goes up in value. That's wonderful. That's not why we do it. We do it personally just for wealth preservation. If you have $1 US, transferring that to a silver coin or a gold coin and making sure that you're protected. It's just wealth preservation. So go to our friends at Lear Capital right now. Give them a call. They're an American company. You'll speak to an American on the phone. They're not farmed out to some Indian call center somewhere. 1-800-613-3557. You can get their silver shortage guide, because silver right now, the reason it's gone sky high is because it's in shortage. So go to their website, learredacted.com as well, or call their 800 number, 1-800-613-3557 to get your free guide, and they can get you help and set up right away.
All right. I love how the chat room's bringing this back around to the Wizard of Oz, because the slippers were supposed to be silver, not ruby, they say in the book, and that it was about the central bank, the deflation of the dollar, the powers that are grown out of that. Right.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
so here we go. Silver. I mean, we didn't plan this. This is too good.
Rob says I'm buying silver ASAP. Yeah, I mean, even just having a little bit. I mean, I don't know what you guys have in savings or however you position yourself, but just even to protect yourself in that way. Some people saying, Ron Paul and Elon Musk could be teaming up. I know Ron Paul tweeted this morning about Elon Musk, saying at least ideas are back in the conversation again, with Elon Musk and RFK Jr. being in the conversation again.
Yeah,
so
exciting.
All right, crazy times, guys. Oh, and by the way, just a point of order. Tomorrow, here we will have live election coverage on Redacted. We will be starting live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 4:30 Pacific Time. We will have live election coverage here on Redacted. Watching the returns come in, we'll be having analysis and great discussions. So join Redacted Live for our election night coverage. Hang out with us.
We should also have tacos, because it's Tuesday. We need
tacos,
something to keep
pizza,
us going. Yeah,
something.
bring what you'd like. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, bring all of it. All right. Well, big news out of the Pacific Northwest as Washington, Oregon, and now other states are actively stepping up security ahead of Election Day. Worries about violence and unrest on Election Day. Here's the deal. Washington's governor, Jay Inslee, has activated the National Guard after a couple of ballot drop boxes were set on fire in the region, destroying hundreds of ballots. The Guard will be around from Monday, so today through Thursday. How many of you are in this area and have seen the National Guard, any kind of, Humvees or otherwise taking to the streets? You would think this is like, some, Latin American country having to deal with an election. No, it's the United States of America that needs the National Guard to step up. Other states coming involved in this as well. The Guard will be around through the end of the week to back up local police to help keep the peace. Democrats say the reason they're activating the National Guard is because of Trump. They're blaming it on Trump, of course. And they're already worried that he's going to stir up violence. Democrats are saying already that Trump will declare victory on election night, no matter whether or not the returns show that he's the winner. So this is why they're girding themselves right now for a Trump victory that he's going to announce. Watch.
The National Guard is on standby for potential unrest. What is going on, Paul Dudridge?
They're calling out the National Guard in certain states. I think Oregon, Washington. We're expecting unrest on the night of the election in certain states. And I think that's probably going to be across many, certainly the swing states. But yes, already the National Guard is on alert for Tuesday night.
Now, will they disqualify Trump even if he wins? Because I'm hearing rumors that if he does win, they'll try and unwin him.
Unwin him. Exactly. This is the rumor now that what will the Democrats do? I'll tell you the one thing we can guarantee is Trump is going to declare victory on Tuesday night. Okay? So there won't be any concession. No matter what the result, Trump will declare victory.
So,
what does unwin him mean?
Unwin him. Well, of course, this is part of the Democratic playbook already. We've heard from Jamie Raskin and others. Like, this is the plan, right? So they will disqualify him even if he does win. You'll see that now they're already lining him up with his comments about Liz Cheney, the Attorney General of Maricopa County, saying they're going to investigate these comments. Would that disqualify him under the Constitution, because he's inciting violence against Liz Cheney? They'll use any strategy they possibly can, no matter where you come down on whether you like Trump or don't like Trump. Exactly the deep state will not allow him to become president. I mean, I've said this repeatedly.
I don't like it when you say that.
I'm just reminding you all of exactly what they're going to do, which is if he wins in a landslide, we have the new Real Clear Politics average poll out today, which shows for the first time Trump winning in that Real Clear Politics average poll. But polls, other internal polling showing a landslide. Of course, the national polls have it 50-50 right now because they want everyone to vote, so they don't want anyone to have a 10-point win margin right now. If he wins in a landslide, they're going to do whatever they can to keep him from becoming president. 100% is going to be the case. So, by the way, you have Oregon. You have Governor Tina Kotek is also on alert in the state of Oregon. The Oregon National Guard isn't deployed yet, but they're standing ready. She says if things get tense, what is that? Things are tense right now.
Yeah, that's not a hypothetical, girl.
So if things get tense, things are tense.
I expect them kicking in my door at any moment now because it's pretty tense around here.
Philip is tense. Do you hear the anxiety in his voice, for crying out loud?
That's what anxiety sounds like in Philip. He's usually pretty steady state.
Get the National Guard out to his house. Portland's police will even have extra officers on election day just in case. And also other states are also preparing the National Guard for unrest. Let me know in the chat room, how many of you have family members tied to the National Guard? Have you been called up? Have there been any notifications sent out to anybody in your state? Let me know. Again, we have Washington, Oregon, and preparing in other states as well. So you should be prepared. You absolutely should. You should have emergency preparedness kit in your cars, in your homes. You should all be prepared. Not just for this. I mean, we should always be prepared, but in the case that they do something, there's, National Guard in the street, there's some sort of martial law as a result of this. I'm telling you guys, make sure you guys are prepared. Now we have the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania now ruling that ballots without dates will not be counted in the 2024 general election. So this was a strategy. They were going to have people flooding, getting all of these mail-in ballots in even after Election Day. And if they don't have dates on them, Democrats were fighting to say that we should be able to count those. No, if there's no dates on them, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is saying they will not be counted now. So that's a big win. That's a big win for the Republicans.
That's a big win for everybody. Everybody should want fair elections and legitimate ballots.
Good point.
Right. Yeah, that's for us, all of us. Somebody in the chat says, is Natalie a rhino? We are independents here.
Yeah.
We don't follow any one party. So don't call me names.
She's not a rhino.
I'm not. I'm a mammal.
She's a mammal. She's a mammal. She's not a rhino. No, yeah, I think both parties are inherently corrupt. Of course, we talked about that ad nauseum on this show. And so, yeah, we're not afraid to pull punches on that at all, or throw punches on that. So ballots are missing for the military. Do men and women who serve our country have the right to vote in our election? It seems like the Biden Pentagon, the Department of Defense, has failed to send absentee ballots to make sure our men and women in uniform around the world can vote in this election. Active duty military. Republican lawmakers are now demanding answers from the Pentagon after the military service members complain that they have not received enough absentee ballots to vote before Election Day. So you have a couple representatives who've come to the fore on this. You have Representative Brian Mast, Bill Huizenga of Michigan, Mike Waltz of Florida sent a letter to Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin saying they are gravely concerned that there are deficiencies in the Defense Department's protocols. How are the U.S. military supposed to vote if you haven't provided enough absentee ballots? And military members are saying, we're going to vote, and they don't have any ballots for us to vote. This is unbelievable.
That's unconscionable.
And
Yes.
they've said they haven't been So wait a minute. You can send $200 billion to Ukraine on a dime like that. Oh, Zelensky needs money? Let's get it over to him. He wants some long-range weapons? Let's get them to him. But our men and women who want to vote in the election just want paper ballots, and you can't get them to them? This is unconscionable.
Right. And it's not legal. And in fact, the Justice Department had been accused of not enforcing the lack of military access to voting overseas during the Obama administration. And we had recently J. Christian Adams, who was a Justice Department lawyer, who said, well, that seems to have been fixed during the Trump administration. But now we're past the Trump administration. That's funny that it's not working again. Right. So does it just not work during Democratic presidencies because that disadvantages Democrats? Weird, right? That's super weird.
Yeah, that's weird how these ballots don't show up for when Democrats are president.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Meanwhile, you see this all coming together, right? Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, all of these neocons came out in support of Kamala Harris for a reason. And now, this is unbelievable. Democrats are calling for Liz Cheney to become a part of a potential Kamala Harris cabinet. Yes. Attorney General of the United States, Liz Cheney. Who asked that question? Who floated that just a few minutes ago? Whoopi Goldberg. Watch this.
I have a question. Are you also a lawyer?
Yeah, I am.
So you could conceivably be a great AG if this was.
Stop it.
And I say this because your moral core is magnificent. Well, I know
wait.
You don't want to think about it, but I just feel like I would feel a lot better with you leading the FBI, the CIA, the NBC, the LMNT, everybody. That's just me. So I'm just saying, should it be floated? Please think about it.
Okay, yes. And under the radar, we have to get Vice President Harris elected.
Yes.
Really, like,
well, I'm being.
You're putting it out there in the universe.
Putting it in the universe.
Yeah, please put it in the
So
universe.
immoral, she says. I'd like
Your
her to
moral
take some
daddy
calls from Iraq.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. We have some people from Iraq who might disagree about the moral fiber of the Cheneys.
Tucker yesterday said that the Iraq War, of course, was the Cheneys' most important vanity project. The killing of millions of people. It was their biggest vanity project.
It was impeccably moral.
And so they continue on this moral crusade to talk about how great the Iraq War was. And so, get Liz Cheney in there as Attorney General. Oh, unbelievable.
So that she can prosecute anybody who's anti-war.
Mike Ben says this. They're going to give Liz Cheney personal control over half the CIA as a reward for her neocon network, the tipping the scales for Harris if she wins. Yeah. So that's exactly what's about to happen. Yeah. So you okay?
Yeah, I got stuck in my. I'm good. I got tangled up. I'm fine.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, is it my turn? Okay. Well, here's a story that's gotten no attention by the mainstream media. Why has the Internet Archive been under constant attack for the past few weeks? This is right out of 1984, where the department has to continually change the past in order to justify current situations in war of Big Brother and the party. It's terrifying. It's happening. Take a look at this. Over the last few weeks, if you visited archive.org, you might have noticed that it was down, inaccessible, up temporarily, and then back down again. Turns out it's been under one of the largest DDoS attacks we've ever seen. A DDoS is a denial of service attack where bots continuously attack the server so that it goes down. Now, the Internet Archive basically is a clear archive of all internet websites and posts. It's how we know what has happened in recent history and distant history. It's really the only way of knowing when the corporate media lies to us and then goes back to change old web pages. This is one of the reasons when we do our research on Redacted, we download things for ourselves. We screenshot for ourselves. We keep it somewhere that you don't get to know off server because we know they're going to change that shit. And we will feel like, wait, that really happened, right? And we're constantly questioning ourselves. So anyhow, here's one example. The CDC recently changed the term vaccine quietly on its website. Overnight, the CDC's vaccine definition changed from a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease to a now current definition of a preparation that's used to stimulate the body's immune system against a disease. And here's what the archive.org says, quote, as of this writing, we have no way to verify content that's been posted for 3 weeks of October, leading to the days of the most contentious and consequential election of our lifetime. In effect, the whole memory of our main information system is just a big black hole right now.
And it's happening as we speak.
Yeah.
So I saw someone in the chat said old news. No, it's still happening. It started back on October 8th. And it's still happening as of today, right before the election.
So we don't have a clear record of who said what, who was for what or what not. I mean, they're playing with our memory. They're saying things, especially the incumbents right now. The Democrats are saying that Trump is for a national abortion ban, and he's never said that. But they can easily write headlines that makes it so that he said that he's against IVF. He's not said that he's against gay, all of those kind of things. They are changing history right before our eyes, and we won't know what's real or not unless we save it all for ourselves. So that's terrifying.
Yeah, people delete their tweets and go back. And so now we have no record. So since October 8th, basically the internet has become a black hole.
Yeah.
Like we don't have a record of history at this moment. Isn't that crazy?
Right.
Where else are you going to get it? You're going to trust your government? We saw the rewriting of the official presidential transcripts when President Biden just the other day said that Trump supporters are the only floating pieces of garbage that he sees. And then they changed it. They changed the transcript. They added an apostrophe. They removed the apostrophe. Like they're playing with all of this. So we can go back in the Internet Archive and look at the exact White House transcript.
Right.
They've changed it and scrubbed it. So they're literally messing with us right now.
This is Orwellian.
Yes.
It was written down. And again, fiction as a legitimate warning.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. All right, let's go to Aurora, Colorado now. Well, here's a story you just can't make up. Instead of going after the Venezuelan gangs that are taking over apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado, and as of today, there's still 2 of them that are controlled by Venezuelan gangs, the Democrat Attorney General of Colorado is going after now the property manager of the apartment complex. You cannot make this up. This is an unbelievable story. It's the same property manager, by the way, that went and confronted the gangs and was beat up and bloodied. Okay. And it basically extorted. They nearly killed him, the Trendo de Agua. This comes after the property management company then also quietly back in the middle of October sent a letter asking for the AG and the state of Colorado to help them get their apartments back from the Venezuelan gangs. Here's the letter. You can see it dated. They sent this over the summer. They didn't even publicize this. So the apartment complex property management team, they didn't like publicize that they sent this. We only learned that they sent this because now they're responding and saying, wait a minute, we asked for their help. And now here's what's happening. Watch.
The owners of the troubled apartment complexes in Aurora that claimed their buildings had been taken over by Venezuelan gangs are now facing an investigation themselves. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. I'm Mark Salinger. Documents obtained by 9 News Investigate show the Colorado Attorney General's office has issued subpoenas to CBZ management over recent months. They're investigating potential violations of the state's safe housing laws that regulate housing conditions. The subpoena demands that the management company turn over documents related to how it screens tenants, its finances, how it handles maintenance requests, and how it promotes its apartments to potential residents. The management company owns several apartment buildings in Aurora, claims that the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua had taken them over and were extorting residents, went viral online with this video. They were amplified by former President Trump, who even came to Aurora last month for a speech on immigration. Documents obtained by 9 News show there have been questions about habitability and cleanliness at the apartment complexes for years. More documents show that CBZ started telling the city that it believed its buildings had been taken over by that gang over the summer. Aurora police have arrested a small number of known.
Yeah. So now shoot the messenger, basically. Go after the apartment complex property management company rather than the Venezuelan gangs that have taken it over.
Right. So what do they want to see on the application for tenants? Are you a gang member? Do you terrorize people? Is it because they're saying they
would you be willing to fight gang members? Like that refuses build his own gang.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we'll let you into this apartment complex if you're armed and you're ready to protect yourself, because we got to be honest with you, these buildings are not that safe. It's unbelievable. So these are the same Democrats that, executed a squirrel in New York, but let violent gangs take over America. That's the priority right now.
All right, let's talk more about these violent gangs taking over America. South American gangs are now targeting wealthy neighborhoods with highly sophisticated attacks. Watch.
Dozens of homes hit in the last year, from Arvada and Aurora to Lakewood, Longmont, and Parker. In Arapahoe County alone, 21 burglaries so far this year aimed at Asian families. In this one, 3 suspects got away with more than $100,000 in cash and luxury items. Westminster burglary detective Adam Lanning says the crews behind these pattern burglaries are sophisticated.
Whoever these suspects are, they are taking a lot of time and energy to A, cover their tracks, B, figure out who their target is.
To keep track of when the homes are occupied or empty, burglars put trackers on victims' cars and disconnect security cameras. In one case, Lanning said burglars planted this surveillance camera in fake shrubbery at a Target house. In another case, one of the thieves approached the house pretending to be a food delivery driver. Another pretends to be from a lawn service.
Think about it. So they're putting hidden cameras in the yards, putting trackers on people's cars. And in fact, in one of the stories that I read, the husband had gone to work. They slashed his tires while he was at work.
So that he couldn't get back.
So that he couldn't respond to the alert from his wife at home, like on the actual burglary at the house itself, or notified that this house had been broken into. So he couldn't move because someone had gone to his work and slashed his car tires.
Now, the New York Post is reporting that they're specifically targeting Asian business owners and Asian households. Why that is, I'm not completely sure, but this is a pattern that's replicated from California. We've seen that at least since the Watts riots, right? Or the Rodney King riots, when Asian business owners were targeted. Why? I think that's an important question. I don't exactly have the answer. They're calling this a sophisticated networks of thieves that's looted nearly $1 million worth of cash and luxury items from the homes of different Asian business owners in Douglas County and also Arapahoe County over the past year. Colorado detectives say that this has spread to multiple states. So it's not just Colorado, it's spreading, and they're describing this as an epidemic.
I think one of the things I've seen about Asian Americans specifically is their distrust of the banking system. So they're targeting them for having a lot of valuables, money, jewelry, things like that kept in their home instead of in the banking system.
Oh.
So I don't know. I'd love to hear from any of our viewers on that. Is that the case?
We saw that in Europe as well when Russian sanctions were put into place, and people from Belarus as well, that they were being targeted because they could not use the banks as Russian citizens anymore. So the Ukrainian gangs knew that they had cash and they were being targeted, especially when we lived in Portugal, all over.
Yeah. Yeah, they would see those the license plates.
The license plate that said Belarus, and then that made them a mark.
They were going right into their homes, these Ukrainian gangs. All right, well, here's some levity before we get to some more news. We're going to talk about these FEMA funds in just a moment, but here, this is unbelievable. I have thought about this a lot, but when you put out like a Harris and Waltz sign in your yard, like what are you sort of opening yourself up to? And obviously the demand of illegal immigrants for housing across the United States has exploded with the tens of millions of illegal immigrants in the United States right now. And you hear from a lot of liberals, right? In a lot of limousine liberals in wealthy neighborhoods, they're like, we care so much about illegal immigrants, we should be providing them housing, until it comes to their own house being used for housing of illegal immigrants when it actually push comes to shove. So these individuals have dressed up as Harris and Waltz canvassers, going door to door and basically speaking to Democratic voters that they know are Democrats. And here's what happened.
I dressed up like I work for Kamala's campaign, and now I'm going to deliver immigrants to her supporters.
We're voting for you, don't worry.
Are you? We do have a surprise, if that's okay, just real fast. We're looking for a place for them to stay. They just came across. They'll sleep on floors. I mean, they're not picky, We have like a 2-year-old, so Hector's good with kids. Sorry, we just can't. Could they just like sleep on your lawn? They need a place to stay. They just came across.
My teenagers live with me.
Oh, that's fine. Hector, he was dating a teenager like a little bit ago, so
Okay.
they just came across. They don't have papers. You're in support of like the whole border situation, and we're just trying to get them a floor to sleep on. Do you guys want COVID? They said they could survive it.
You don't know how to say her name.
We work with her, so we know how to say her name.
Earlier you said Kamala. The way she pronounces her name is Kamala. You don't work with her either.
See that car? We have 3 dudes who just came across the border. We're trying to find them a home.
Find them a home.
Just say I'm voting for Donald Trump without saying it, okay?
That's a wrong attitude, mister. I said my vote is private.
So you're voting Kamala?
No. You said it again.
I've watched that 4 times. And now NBC has also done a report now, and they don't want these people on camera. So people that have Harris and Waltz signs in their yard, residents are receiving fake Harris campaign postcards in the mail. And I just had to laugh at this. Watch.
I put a lawn sign in my front yard, and I don't think I should be subjected to these fraudulent mailers.
When this 50-year-old Shrewsbury woman put up a Harris wall sign in front of her home, she just wanted to show her support. She never imagined she would be subjected to a campaign dirty trick.
It really creeped me out.
She was dismayed when the mail arrived this week and she received this postcard. It purports to be from the Harris campaign, thanking her for putting up a sign and alerting her a family from Nicaragua would be moving into her home.
That's when I realized it was an obvious attempt to try to either scare me or rage bait me and make me upset.
It's absolutely a scare tactic.
Suffolk.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's just so funny because
But I would be looking out the window, even though you're like, wait, that can't be real. But
are they coming? Because they said they were going to be here on the 30th of October. I mean, that's like the ultimate. It's the ultimate trolling. It's get the house ready.
Mm-hmm.
I love that the other one. He's like, no, he's good with kids. We have a 2-year-old living here. Well, Hector is great with kids,
right?
Yeah, and the other guy says, no, we're a house of COVID right now. We've got COVID. And he's like, no, they'll survive it. They're happy to get COVID. They're fine with getting COVID. They'll sleep on your floors. Liberals, you're so in favor of the illegal immigrant population. Just open up your doors. Let them live here. I love it.
I wonder who were those Latin guys who went along with that, if that thought that was funny.
I don't know, but they were joking around and they're like, all right, well, we got shut down.
I don't think it's hard to find because Latins are, against the Democrats right now for the first time in a long time. And
yeah, I mean,
it's really something to see.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing to see the black voter numbers right now, Latino number voters right now. It's unbelievable. So I think there's going to be some really shocking data that we're going to see over the next few days once this election wraps up. We got a lot more news to get to here. We're going to go to Chicago in a moment because you won't believe what's happening with the FEMA money that's designated for the United States of America. Americans in time of need. FEMA dollars that are used to, protect us in the case of hurricane damage and from Hurricane Helene through Asheville, North Carolina, across the country, is being repurposed and utilized to support illegal immigrants in Chicago. What did you find?
Yeah, so we found a number of Illinois congressional candidates and city candidates that are reaching out to prepare Mayor Brandon Johnson for a conversation with Mayorkas. And they put together a letter, and they all signed this letter about so tens of millions, over billions of dollars came into Chicagoland from different funds and sources. We're trying to figure out, right? They're coming from so many different channels. But in this one case, we had Congressman Sean Casten, Deli Ramirez, let's see, I can't even read, Raja Krishnamoorthy, all asking, hey, can you quickly get us this $20.5 million of special funding from FEMA or Homeland Security to give to these illegal immigrants? Well, the Chicago's suffering. I mean, big time. People are suffering. That's why so many people are voting for Trump in the minority areas of the city. Well, you wish these guys would ask for this types of money to fund these people that are living in the streets and all these other areas that are suffering throughout the whole Chicagoland area.
So these are Democrats requesting these funds. And what exactly are they asking the money to go for? They're taking it from FEMA.
Yeah.
For what? For food, for housing, for illegals?
Yeah, for food, for housing, for shelters. One of them is called Open Kitchens. This is separate from the letter. And I don't even have the whole year. I only got partial releases, right? 12.5 million to Open Kitchens. Another 12 million from the Office of Management and Budget that came out quarterly. It was a quarterly one. Chicago said they were spending $20 million per day at one point in time. Equitable Social, I don't even know what that company is, from 523 to 331 of 24, $28 million. I don't even know who that company is. There's another one, 9.3, 12.5 million from FEMA Treasury into the city of Chicago. This is only a snapshot. I didn't get everything I asked for because they said there was almost 3 million records. I had to shorten it. So these are just.
So wait a minute, let me just be clear. When you reached out to FEMA through these FOIA requests, and this isn't a conspiracy theory, you got this directly from FEMA, from Freedom of Information Act requests. They told you that there was over 3 million records, and it was going to take time to pull this information together.
Actually, this is from the city of Chicago's FOIA officers requesting keyword search FEMA and immigrants, right? And so they got back and they said that it was burdensome on them, which I understand, right? 3 million records. It would take them 165,000 hours to give me the information. So they gave me just little snapshots. This is only a very small snapshot of what's going on. And, they keep telling us how much money they spent. But you remember, you got money from Chicago, you got money from the state of Illinois, you got money from the county, you got money from the federal government, you got money from the NGOs. I don't think that we're going to have a full understanding of actually how much money is being spent on, because we don't have all the channels that are coming through of these funding, right? I mean, it's probably way more than what we're told.
Well, that you hit on the biggest issue here is that using these non-governmental organizations, Mayorkas and Biden's Department of Homeland Security can hide. I mean, they can hide the pickle. They can run these things through all of these different groups. So the Department of Homeland Security can send a few million dollars over here, a few million dollars over here. So it doesn't look like as nefarious as it's all coming through FEMA. So all these non-governmental organizations are receiving all of this grant money and all of this money from the Department of Homeland Security to do housing, to provide food, provide housing assistance and funding, right, for these illegal immigrants. Am I right about that, or am I wrong?
Oh, yeah. Here's more insulting. So the security guard company called Garda World, big international, they're like, what do you call it? Black, what was that big security company? Blackwater? Blackwater. They're an international Blackwater. They're all over the world, but they're out of Canada. They're providing the security services at all these shelters. They're a Canadian company. Oh, guess what? Guess who they provide security for in Davos? I'll give you 3 guesses. Garda World. One of their subsidiaries does Davos. And then they make the CEO follows the UN guidelines and stuff. So what they did is some of these locations in Chicago, when they converted these hotels and stuff into centers, They got rid of the Chicago security guard companies. In one case, a guy said, well, they made us an offer we couldn't refuse when their contract came up, and they transitioned to providing services for the immigrants. They got rid of this local Chicago company, and they hired Garda World all over the city of Chicago. So why wouldn't you hire minority companies and let them have first of all, they shouldn't be here. But if you're going to do that, why don't you spend the money with an American company, not a Canadian company? So Garda, they have a North American affiliate, but it's a Canadian company, right? And then they also gave them a $29 million contract to build those shelters. They give a $29 million contract. And by the way, in Denver, Colorado, gave them a $30 million contract before Chicago. But what Colorado did is they found out that Garda World never did it before. They rejected. It's all, you guys go search it. They withdrew their contract from Garda World. But for some reason, Mayor Brandon Johnson decided to give his $29 million contract to Garda World. Again, it's all out there. You could read it. We need to expose it, right? So if we're going to waste our money and really waste our money, we should at least give Americans, and Brandon Johnson says how black he is, he's a minority. Well, how come you don't have them all lined up to get these contracts, right?
Right. What are the people of Chicago saying when you're out there? The people that are being affected by this, they're looking over their shoulders, seeing that these illegal immigrants are being given housing and food, vouchers, cell phones, travel, whatever they want, cars, and Chicagoans are just being pushed to the side. What are they saying? You're on the streets all the time talking to these people. What are they saying to you?
I've got a great video from last week I'm going to share with you. I went to Little Village, heart of the Hispanic neighborhood, at a church the same day they had meetings of 20-some pastors from all over. It was just coincidental luck. I took the Epoch Times reporter. My friend Dr. Shando hosted it. He translated for us. All these pastors from all over Chicago, Clayton, are upset. They're typically Democrats, right? I mean, I got the videos. They're up. One guy, I don't know where he was from in South America. Most of them didn't speak English, and they translate. And he said, when we were down in South America, we'd look to America as the beacon for so many things, including the political process. Now I'm here. He goes, and we had to wait to become, U.S. citizens, and now they're sending these people that are not vetted. Why are they doing it? What is their purpose? And all the crime, and they're all upset. And he's saying, do they expect that they're going to vote? Is that what they're trying to do? Vote for them? That's not right. And it was good to hear that, right? From the heart of Chicago, in the inner city of the all Hispanic, massive Hispanic neighborhood with these leading pastors and community leaders. Every single person that spoke was against it. I'll share that with you when I'm ready, but it was refreshing to hear that. And let's see how they're going to vote. I hope they're going to stand behind their words. I mean, they were taking me on the side trying to, translate and stuff and express their frustrations after the meeting. I had 4 or 5 of them come up. And so they are upset.
Remarkable. Well, we've got less than 24 hours now to see what happens in the state of Illinois and across the country with all of these stories. Covering Denver, Colorado, the break-ins now targeting with these South American gangs that are targeting these affluent homes. This is America right now. Terry Newsom is behind enemy lines up there in Chicago, bringing us this great work, man. Great work getting all these FOIA requests and uncovering this corruption. This is unbelievable. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Give me 1 second to put this in. Okay. Okay, here we go. Trump in the lead, final poll predictions. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for right here.
Carolina and Alaska. I'll be showing you folks in this video my final 2024 election projection. Over 4 years have passed while we have been covering this race. Review hundreds of polls, forecasts, and betting markets, and it all boils down to this. I precisely projected Joe Biden's exact 306 to 232 electoral vote win in 2020. And here today I'm unveiling my final 2024 electoral map projection. We will thus just start right away. Not a cause for time wasting. Starting with the safe states for both candidates, races Harris or Trump will win by 12 percentage points or more will first be discussed. Beginning with these safe Trump states, Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska except its 2nd district, as well as Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, South Carolina, and Alaska. Kamala Harris will then be sweeping the West Coast, claiming Washington, Oregon, and California, along with Hawaii, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and the 1st District of Maine. She will visit Kamala Harris is at 181 electoral votes, Donald Trump at 125. But this is hardly reason for concern given all the safe states are filled in. With the plausible states, he will cover a great distance. Therefore, 5 to 12 points are the deciding factors in these races. Though one candidate will still have a rather clear advantage, they will be notably more competitive than the solid states. First, let us begin with the most likely states for the former president. He is definitely going to do exceptionally well in the lower Midwest in Ohio and Iowa. He has regularly carried in the past 2 election cycles these 2 states. Really, just consider how the map appeared in 2012. Ohio went at Obama by 3%. Iowa went at Obama by 6%. Trump moves Iowa 15 points to the right just 4 years later, and it goes to him by 9.4%. Ohio shows an 11-point change. Trump earns an 8.1% Buckeye State victory. Trump does it once more in 2020, when everyone believes Joe Biden will outperform Hillary Clinton. He wins Iowa with an 8.2% margin, Ohio by 8, essentially the same margins. Trump can most likely win these 2 states by 10 points or more against Kamala Harris, but getting over 12 will prove rather difficult. Thus, they will be classified as likely Republican. Texas and Florida come next, 2 more races that simply won't be close. Trump took home both of these states in 2016 and 2020. Texas has lately always been a Republican bastion. Since 1976 and Jimmy Carter's election, it hasn't gone blue. Still, Florida used to always be among the most competitive states in the Union. Actually, in 2012, it was the only tilt state visible on the map. 2016 saw once more a decision based less than 2 points. Trump prevailed in Florida by 1.2. Then in 2020, when most people predicted Joe Biden to win the state back for Democrats, Trump triples his margin and most likely will act similarly once more. Florida polling shows the former president leading by about 8 points. He will most certainly prevail at least double-digit margin. In Texas, meanwhile, Trump is looking great as well. In a state he merely carried by 5.6 in 2020, his polling average leads by 8 points. And this was the case when asked. He was merely expected to win by 1. Indeed, polls taken at the very end of the 2020 cycle indicated that Trump was barely likely to beat Biden in the Lone Star State. That was clearly always going to be erroneous. Texas won not go blue for a very long period. Today most certainly belongs to Republicans. We now also have Maine's 2nd district at last. It isn't going to be close. Trump is going to triumph 3 times. And thus, with the solid and likely states now occupied for the former president, Donald Trump takes front stage. Just 51 votes separate him from the presidency at 219 electoral votes. But now we'll fill in Kamala Harris's expected states, races she'll win by 5 to 12 points. We shall first travel westward from Colorado and New Mexico, 2 states purchased and showed rather good performance in the past election. In Colorado, he beat Trump 13.5 percentage point wise. It was exactly blue. Biden carried New Mexico by 10.8. Even then, Kamala Harris is en route to win Colorado by less than a double-digit margin today. She most likely carries it by 8 or 9. Surely a notable decline from the 4 years ago Democratic level. Similar thing apply in New Mexico. Kamala Harris will not be winning by a double-digit margin. If she even makes it by with a 7% margin of victory, Nowhere near 11 points should be lucky. Thus, the vice president will probably be of either race. Minnesota comes next, and I have Kamala Harris winning by just over 7 points. It will be more competitive than it was 4 years ago when Joe Biden carried Minnesota by 7.1%. He was running with Harris as his running buddy at this point. Kamala Harris comes from California, not close to Minnesota. Today, Kamala Harris is running alongside Governor Tim Walz, the literal governor of Minnesota. She is also hardly scoring above 5%. Actually, I think she is at 4.8 over Donald Trump in the state. Given Joe Biden performed better, that really is an abysmal margin. And Kamala Harris is once again running with the literal governor of the state. She should be winning by minimum 9 to 10 points. In 2022, Tim Walz was re-elected as governor by well over a double-digit margin. But Walz simply isn't performing quite as well with Kamala Harris on the ticket. Minnesota will hence be probably blue, but just barely. Harris is winning by somewhat over a 5-point margin. She will have a lot of other issues all around the map if she cannot surpass Joe Biden in the home state of her running buddy. We will now proceed to the Northeast, where Maine and New Hampshire reside, 2 states where Kamala Harris's performance will not be too unlike from Joe Biden's. What is likely to show a clear decline? In 2020, Joe Biden emerged victorious in New Hampshire by 7.4%. Kamala Harris is winning, maybe by 5 or 6. Maine came to Joe Biden by 9.1. Kamala Harris is winning roughly at 7 to 8 level. These are thus 2 races where the vice president's performance has been rather average. Generally, these states are moving left, every time Democrats are performing increasingly better. But Kamala Harris is on the ballot, thus we will see a change in that trend since she clearly cannot outperform the current president. Thus, although just barely, the Granite State in Maine will be probably blue-colored. The 2nd District of Nebraska comes next, where Joe Biden prevailed by 6.6%. The 2nd District is, however, actually more liberal than it was in the past since the lines have been altered following the 2020 census. Basically, Omaha and some of the neighboring suburbs, Kamala Harris is on target to win by just under a double-digit margin. It's also probably blue. And last on this map, Virginia is the most likely state. Of course, from 2020, Kamala Harris will likely prevail by roughly half of Biden's 10-point margin. She will not be able to get anywhere over 7, most likely not over 6 either. Still, a 5-point margin of victory is reasonable given that even Hillary Clinton prevailed by more than 5% in 2016. Her performance all around was, of course, rather poor. Virginia, meantime, has been moving to the right. Harris is going to perform far worse than the current president for primarily this reason. Still, it's going to be probably for now. We shall be somewhat giving to the Democrats, and thus we have just the 7 battleground states left. This hardly surprises me at all. These are the 7 races we have been focusing mostly on over the whole year. And with them not yet filled in, Kamala Harris is that 226 electoral vote surpass at 219. Basically, the election is still a tie until we arrive to these battlefields. This group of 7 truly is just that. Though they account for only 93 of the electoral colleges, 538 votes, they truly hold all the power. The outcomes in every other state are essentially preordained. Now, for Minnesota, Virginia, or New Hampshire, for example, there were areas where Trump seemed to shine. Realistically, though, those are always far shots. Now it was plausible if Trump kept performing remarkably in those states. But now, with 1 day left to go, I am here to tell you that simply isn't going to happen. Anyone claiming Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, or New Mexico is actually competitive is just lying to your face. Thus, 2 of the 7 states will be labeled as lead based on this. The other 5 will be tilting. Lean states will thus be decided by a 1 to 5 point margin. Obviously, tilt states fall short of 1. We'll start south in the Sun Belt. We first will begin with the 2 lean states. And just to let you know here, both of them will be attending Donald Trump. I start in Arizona, where Donald Trump is expected to prevail by 1 to 3 points. The proximity of these races makes anything feasible. However, given that Trump won Arizona by almost 4 points in 2016 and lost by 0.3 to Joe Biden in 2020, it most certainly seems that he will be winning in that state. The polls show Trump leading by 2.6% today. Based just on the graph here, his lead has only been rising as the election approaches. He is doing really nicely. He is quite improbable going to lose Arizona. For the former president, this is absolutely a winning state. Should he lose Arizona, the contest ends. As of right now, though, he most certainly will flip Arizona back. It will be the first lean red state mapped. And Georgia, on the other side of the Sun Belt, will naturally be the other lean state. Really, this race resembles the Arizona election rather closely. Trump lost Georgia barely as well, with 0.24% separating Biden from the former president. Now, both of these states were historic turns for Joe Biden in 2020. From 1996, no Democrat had won Arizona all around. Georgia, you have to go back to 1992. Now, given how historic these wins were for Democrats, Kamala Harris, who is performing far worse than Joe Biden, simply isn't in a position to achieve the success Biden had here 4 years ago. Like they have been voting for the past 30 years, both of these states are quite likely to revert into the Republican column. Georgia thus gives Trump 2.3% in the polling average favoritism. There is also a fresh New York Times poll showing Harris up by 1. Clearly, that is going to be erroneous. The New York Times consistently exaggerates Democratic count. After Harris peaked following the Democratic conference, Trump has been ahead essentially since early September. But starting in the middle of last month, Trump's lead has been widening. He is in a really good position here. Georgia's basic nature is still conservative, and on this map it will be the other lean Republican state. And so Arizona and Georgia are must victories, simply to chart Trump's possible routes to triumph here. Should Trump fail to secure these two states, it is quite improbable he will be able to win any of the other toss-ups that will ultimately yield 270 electoral votes. The good news is, though, that even if he loses, he is rather likely to win Georgia and Arizona. Thus, at the very least, this essentially represents his floor. Less than 1%, or perhaps slightly over 1%, will most likely determine all 5 of the surviving states. But since they are truly that competitive, I will be grouping them all under the tilt categories for either Democrats or Republicans. Now for Trump, North Carolina and Pennsylvania would be his fastest road to triumph. Although the Pennsylvania road would be more likely right now, it could also pass through North Carolina and Wisconsin. Nevada only has 6 electoral votes, thus winning Nevada doesn't really matter to Trump. North Carolina absolutely does. Actually, Trump is doing rather nicely in the Tar Heel state. His polling average leads by 1.5%. He is rather obviously the favorite. He brought North Carolina home in 2016 and 2020. From the 7 swing states he carried in both of the past 2 elections, this is the only one. He lost Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania in 2020, but North Carolina he managed to hang on to, and he's going to win it once more. I do have tilt Republican here. Though he has led the polling average the whole election cycle, the margin will be a somewhat smaller one. Mark Robinson, the Republican nominee for governor, is the reason North Carolina appeals to me as more competitive. He has conducted a campaign with disaster. He has participated in so many scandals. He will lose to Josh Stein almost by a double-digit margin. Robinson is not going to be able to pull Trump down in the presidential contest, but he is definitely not doing the former president any favors. Thus, I do have the Tar Heel state voting somewhat to the left of both Arizona and Georgia. With Trump at 262 electoral votes, he is thus only 8 away from the presidency. He will want any one of the 3 upper Midwestern states. With its 19 electoral votes, Pennsylvania is also quite likely to be the keystone state that helps him to calm his frenzy. There is rather close an election there. Trump sets the pace at 0.3%. Though Republicans are looking good, especially with early voting, it is absolutely going to go right to the wire. Following the early 2020 voting period, they lag by almost 1 million. Democrats lead nowadays by less than 500,000. Their target was a buffer of 500,000 or perhaps 600,000. Their reach fell short of that. And in a state they carried by just 80,000 votes 4 years ago, that little difference will be rather significant. The first attempted failed murder on Trump also happened in Pennsylvania. He will find some minor benefit from that. And once more, in a race as near as this one, every tiny bit counts. Pennsylvania will thus be the second tilt state on the map. By a quite small margin, I have it in Trump's favor. Although this election is close, we really don't need Arizona given wins in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. Nonetheless, Donald Trump does cross the finish line with these 4 triumphs. He will still do a little bit more, though. With his 1% polling average advantage, Trump is also going to win Nevada. Now, since Nevada hasn't gone red since the 2004 election, victory here will be challenging for the former president. A win here would thus be rather significant. Although the two candidates are running closely according to the polls, Republicans are gaining ground in the Silver State. By defeating the current Democrat, Republicans gained the governorship of Nevada in 2022. Trump will thus also make notable advances here. With the former president ranking less than half a percentage point, it will be tilt Republican. Lastly, in Wisconsin and Michigan, these are essentially toss-ups. Usually I would classify them as toss-up and not fill them in at all. Clearly, though, I would assume you people would want me to respond for every one of these states. And in Wisconsin and Michigan, the polls essentially match Harris up by 0.3 in Wisconsin by 0.6 in Michigan. Now, the early voting numbers are the main reason I'm giving Kamala Harris a narrow lead rather than the polling. Comparatively to Pennsylvania and Nevada, the vice president is in a somewhat better posture. We all know, of course, that Wisconsin and Michigan will vote left of those two states. Given Pennsylvania and Nevada's proximity, I also see the most reasonable result as being the one whereby Kamala Harris barely edges Trump out in both Wisconsin and Michigan. If Trump were able to carry two states as well, though, I would most certainly not be surprised. This is it then. This is my projection for the 2024 elections. Final. Donald Trump gains 287 electoral votes, while Kamala Harris scores 251. Although it will be a close contest, Trump will be re-elected to be the 47th president, thus he will declare a clear victory. I really appreciate you folks watching. Verify your enjoyment.
It is election night. It is election day in America. But breaking moments ago, as we were just discussing, Joe Rogan has now officially endorsed Donald J. Trump for president. We'll have more on this in a moment. It's officially election eve, just a few hours short. Polls will be open, and anyone who didn't already vote, well, they'll have one last day to cast their ballot, let their voice be heard. It is expected 80+ million Americans will vote tomorrow. That means that this election is not decided. Mark my words, it will be decided now by what we call turnout. Now, I've been saying to people, especially if you live in Georgia, North Carolina, if you live in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, if you live in Michigan, if you live in Arizona, Nevada, treat your vote like it will be the deciding vote this election. If you look at the polls and for what they mean, whether you trust them or you don't trust them, this race has razor-thin margins in these key swing states. Your vote will absolutely matter, and you couldn't have two more distinct visions for the future of the country. In these swing states alone, your vote is going to be particularly important. Here's where we start tonight. According to my sources, there is cautious optimism at the Trump campaign. Don't take that to the bank. Assume your vote's the deciding vote. As of tonight, Kamala Harris has a little bit of a math problem in key battleground states because early vote turnout was way down for Democrats, especially in deep blue urban areas. Meanwhile, early vote turnout was way up for Republicans with a record participation in rural areas. But all of this will mean absolutely nothing without a big day tomorrow. What I would say is a sense of urgency is critical. This is a tipping point. I would even call it an inflection point for the country. There is so much at stake. And if you care about your children, your grandchildren, you've got to care about the direction of the country. There's no doubt a Kamala Harris presidency, in my mind, would be a disaster. Now, despite all the vague answers, and I love my favorite answer is, Kamala, what do you think of the economy? I was born in the middle class. Kamala, what do you think of the immigration problem? Did you know that I grew up in a middle class neighborhood? Besides all of that, the uncomfortable, obnoxious giggling, the lack of vetting from the media, which I think is a huge story as it relates to the entire election cycle. There is no mystery about what Kamala Harris truly believes. This is the single most radical far-left candidate to ever run as a major party candidate. But don't take my words for it. In spite of the media hiding all of this from you, before you vote, let's do what the state-run media mob has purposely failed to do. Let's just play Kamala, her real views in her own words that she has been unwilling to express, and she's been ducking and dodging and hiding and bobbing and weaving. Let's start with the lifeblood of the world economy. It's called energy. Take a look.
Will you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking your first day in office, adding the United States to the list of countries who have banned this devastating practice?
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah.
So would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes. And I've, again, worked on that.
Now, of course, she wants to win Pennsylvania, so she's taken a different position. Which Kamala do you believe? You think that person will be eager to sign off on new leases for fracking? She's been against offshore drilling. She has long wanted to destroy the fossil fuel industry in America. She's the one that supported electric vehicle mandates in the country, not choice, mandates. Meanwhile, in his first term, Donald Trump unleashed American energy. We became energy independent for the first time in 75 years. Remember what you were paying? The price at the pump was way down. Do you like paying $1.50 more a gallon for gasoline now? America was a net exporter of energy. At the same time, Kamala co-sponsored the Capitol is killing $93 trillion Green New Deal, proudly declared that she would eliminate the filibuster to ram it through Congress. Take a look, her in her own words.
Here's my point. If they fail to act as president of the United States, I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal.
Why is she not running on what she really believes? She co-sponsored that bill with Bernie Sanders in the U.S. Senate. Let's be clear. That Green New Deal would implement full-fledged socialism, statism, Marxism, pick the word of your choice into the U.S. It would cost a whopping $93 trillion, allow the government to control the means of production in several major industries, and spell the end of capitalism and the end of the American dream. And by the way, capitalism, the greatest wealth creation system ever designed by mankind. But Kamala thinks it's a great idea. So great that she wrote the bill in the Senate. Now, Kamala's track record on the economy is absolutely awful. Take a look.
Fighting inflation is one of our administration's top economic priorities.
Was it wrong to consider inflation transitory? I mean, these price spikes seem like they're going to be with us for a while.
We have to address the fact that we got to deal with the fact that folks are paying for gas, paying for groceries, and I need solutions to it.
She's promoting policies like saying that every single carbon emission in the country, every car, should be eliminated within the next 11 years, everything from a 70 to 80% tax rate. Do you agree that she could possibly, in this ideology of the socialist left, could splinter your party?
No, I think that she is challenging the status quo. I think that's fantastic. We've got to increase the corporate tax rate. We also have to increase taxes for the top 1%. And that part of that is going to be about repealing that tax bill they just passed. And also looking at estate taxes are going to have to go up.
By the way, now she's saying on day one, she's going to deal with inflation and that she's going to fix the border that she's been telling us for 3+ years is secure. Wasn't day one January 20th, 2021? And talking about a 70 to 80% tax rate, okay, on top of a tax on unrealized capital gains, a capital gains hike in and of itself, of course she has vowed to let the Trump tax cuts expire. That means all of you will pay higher taxes. Remember, Trump lowered taxes for all Americans with those tax cuts, but who benefited? The middle class and minorities in America. Meanwhile, Kamala thinks Bidenomics was a great success. She wouldn't change a thing. Take a look.
All that, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else, that is called Bidenomics. That is called Bidenomics, and we are very proud of Bidenomics. And as today's jobs numbers make clear, Bidenomics is working.
You probably forget, but under Donald Trump, inflation was non-existent. Under Biden and Harris, prices have gone up more than 20+% on average, but Kamala just doesn't seem to notice the record-setting inflation only until recently when she became the presumptive nominee. This is coming from the same Kamala Harris who told us the border's secure. You might not remember this.
Would you call the border secure?
I think that there is no question that we have to do what the president and I asked Congress to do. Is the first request we made. Pass a bill to create a pathway to citizenship. The border is secure.
You're confident this border is secure?
We have a secure border in that is a priority for any nation, including ours and our administration.
Now, before Kamala, under Donald Trump, the border was secure, record low crossings, but then came this border czar Kamala Harris and a flood of unvetted Harris-Biden illegal immigrants, nearly 12.5 million of them. She knew the border wasn't secure. She knew millions of these illegal immigrants were unvetted, pouring into our country each and every year. That included murderers, rapists, known terrorists. We don't know where they are, but they're in the country. We're coming in record numbers from over 180 countries, including Iran, including Syria, including Afghanistan, including Egypt and Venezuela, and tens of thousands from China and Russia. Murderers, rapists, gang members, other violent convicted criminals were entering our country, are here now. She knew that billions of taxpayer dollars, your money, were being spent on food, housing, healthcare, education, childcare for illegal immigrants. But this is what Kamala supports. In fact, she chose a running mate, Tim Walz, who advocated for taxpayer-funded college tuition for Harris-Biden illegals and legal driver's licenses as well. Kamala herself supporting taxpayer-funded sex change operations for convicts and for her illegal immigrants. It's crazy. I know. It almost sounds like impossible to believe, but it's true. That is who you might be voting for tomorrow. Now America's border crisis is par for the course. For years, Kamala advocated for open borders where illegal immigration is decriminalized, so it's mission accomplished for Biden's borders are. Take a look.
You support giving universal health care, Medicare for all to people who are in this country illegally?
Let me just be very clear about this. I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being from access to public safety, public education, or public health, period.
If someone crosses over the border, it's illegally, it is illegal, and you would decriminalize it.
I would not make it a crime punishable by jail. It should be a civil enforcement issue, but not a criminal enforcement issue. On the subject of transnational gangs, let's be perfectly clear. The president's medieval vanity project is not going to stop them.
Listen, I think there's no question that we've got to critically re-examine ICE and its role and the way that it is being administered and the work it is doing. And we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
That is the real Kamala Harris. That is the Kamala Harris that has been protected her entire campaign by the state-run media mob. Not only does she want to decriminalize the illegal immigration, she also seems to have a very soft spot in her heart for violent criminals and rioters. You might recall, the media didn't remind you during this election year, the summer of 2020, 574 riots, 4 days after a police precinct was burned to the ground in Minneapolis. She promoted a Minnesota bail fund, raising money to get violent offenders back on the streets. And again, 4 days after a police precinct burned to the ground. And then she went on CBS, Colbert, and said, those rioters, they're not going to stop, and they shouldn't stop. And I'm not going to stop supporting them, in case you forgot.
This is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
Is Liz Cheney watching? Beware, take note. They're not going to stop and shouldn't stop. So Kamala seemingly wants to decriminalize left-wing violent riots, illegal immigration. But if you are a law-abiding American, don't you dare utter the words illegal alien or radical Islamic terrorism. You need to be courageous, according to Kamala. Take a look.
You must have the courage to object when they use that term, radical Islamic terrorism, which ignores how Muslims have overwhelmingly been the greatest victims of terror. And we must also have the courage to reject that term, illegal alien. I have seen some of the worst of criminal behavior. I have seen the worst of crime. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
In contrast, no one values freedom of speech more than Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris doesn't just want to censor your speech, she wants to ban a lot of things like private health insurance. She said it in her own words. Take a look.
You support the Medicare for All bill, I think initially co-sponsored by Senator Bernie Sanders. You're also a co-sponsor on it. I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance. So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it?
Well, listen, the idea is that everyone gets access to medical care, and you don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company, having them give you approval, going through the paperwork, all of the delay that may require. Who of us has not had that situation where you got to wait for approval and the doctor says, well, I don't know if your insurance company is going to cover this? Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
Government-run health care, even for illegal immigrants, and no private health insurance. She also wants to get rid of the Second Amendment in spite of claims to the contrary and disarm law-abiding American citizens. Her mandatory gun buyback program, I'd call that gun confiscation. You decide.
Assault weapons that are already in circulation. What do you do about those?
Well, there are approximately 5 million, to your point, Craig. We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
How mandatory is your gun buyback program?
It's mandatory.
Second Amendment?
The Second Amendment, listen, we're going to have to do it the right way. There's no question about that. But we don't have any, we have to get these guns off the street.
Just because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible and safe in the way you conduct your affairs.
Donald Trump, he will protect your First Amendment rights, your Second Amendment rights. He will limit government's power. That is your choice tomorrow. While Kamala will be coming for your guns, based on Kamala's own words, she wants to turn America into Venezuela. But with less oil and gas production, that is the worst case scenario. It will lead to massive shortages. It will increase the cost of everything you buy in every store you go to, even way beyond the current inflation we are experiencing. That would be economic ruin, a loss of freedom, and frankly, America will become unrecognizable, in my view. Not a great scenario. The best case scenario is that she is a continuation of the Biden White House, which was the single worst administration in modern American history. The inflation will continue. Prices will not come down. Government spending will only go up. Taxes will go up. Regulations will go up. Crime will rise. Chaos will continue around the globe. And remember, according to Kamala's own words, she played a vital role in all of the major decisions at the White House. She was the last person in the room, from Afghanistan to the border to the economy. Take a look.
President Biden always said that he wants you to be the last person in the room, particularly for big decisions, just as he was for President Obama. He just made a really big decision, Afghanistan.
Yes.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do. And I'm going to add to that. This is a president who has an extraordinary amount of courage.
For the 80+ million of you tomorrow that are going to vote, when someone is telling you who they are, believe them. Tomorrow when you head to the polls, ask yourself one simple question. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? We are truly blessed in this country. We live in the greatest country, I believe, that God ever created man. Tomorrow, the American dream is on the ballot. America as we know it is on the ballot. And in his closing argument to the American people, Donald Trump is vowing to unleash America's true potential. This is your choice tomorrow. Take a look.
But over the past 4 years, Americans have suffered one catastrophic failure, betrayal, and humiliation after another. Kamala Harris has delivered soaring prices and economic anguish at home, war and chaos abroad, and nation-destroying invasion on our southern border like nobody's ever seen before. With your vote tomorrow, we can fix every single problem our country faces and lead America, and indeed the whole world, to new heights of glory. Vote for me and I will deliver rising wages, soaring income, and a colossal surge of jobs, wealth, and opportunity for Americans of every race, religion, color, and creed, every one of them. As your president, I will fight for you every single day with every breath in my body. I will fight.
This is the greatest choice election in our lifetime, and the choice couldn't be more distinct. It couldn't be any more clear. Under Donald Trump, child poverty was at a multi-decade low. Income levels for all Americans reached record highs, including for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workplace, African American youth unemployment. Inflation was non-existent. Interest rates were at record low. The border was secure. Gas prices were low. The world was a more peaceful place. This is what Donald Trump did his first term, and this is what he plans to do to make America great again. So you can turn off the noise and the smears, being called a Nazi, being called a racist, being called a fascist, being called garbage, and there's only one option. I'm only one host. I have this camera, which you give me every night. I'm very grateful for it. But this choice is your choice. It's up to the American people. The choice could not be any more clear. 80 million or more of you will vote tomorrow. I hope for the sake of our children and grandchildren that you will go to the polls and that we will make a choice for America's future. We stand on the shoulders of the greatest generation, and our lives are built upon their sacrifice. Every generation likes to leave this country in better shape than they found it. I think that's on the ballot tomorrow.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey,
go at it. I want to talk to you about the American federal government three-letter agencies that are trying to get us to believe falsely. I think you're going to tell me that Russia is trying to influence tomorrow's election to push the outcome toward a Trump victory. But before we get there, as our friend Larry Johnson will discuss shortly, the New York Times finally acknowledges that Ukraine is in bad shape. Its statistics are way off, but its conclusion seems to be nearly the same as yours, mine, Larry's, and everybody else on this program who opines on it. Why the sudden realization 2 or 3 days before Election Day?
Well, I don't know exactly, Judge. It's been a long time in coming. Over the last couple of weeks, there have been several articles intimating that, actually, Ukraine is not winning. Russia seems to be winning. The denouement is coming within the next few months, for sure, maybe in the next few weeks. So I see the Times just covering their rear ends and saying, well, look, we did say in early November that this was not going so well. And I think the American people, kind of the ones that read the Times, will say, oh, well, yeah, the Times acknowledged that before it happened. It's a terrible performance. The press and the media have really let us down, and the intelligence community, as I say, telling the president, President Biden, to tell everyone in the world from Helsinki in July of last year, Russia has lost definitively. There's no way that they can win this thing. So it's really kind of strange.
I guess we would be more concerned if this were the Washington Post, because then we know whose views the Washington Post would be mouthing. So let me ask you point blank, if the Times is saying this, Are these leaks from the CIA, or are your former colleagues sticking with leaking to their favorite entity, the Washington Post?
Well, I'm sure there are leaks, Judge. This is par for the course. And I'm sure there's lots of dissent in the intelligence community. After all, there have to be a couple of honest people left. And they have to be willing to say, you know, this is a charade, that we have a chance in Ukraine. And they would be likely to go to the Washington Post and the New York Times. The difference is that the Times and the Post will print it now, because it's so clear that this is a fool's errand, and everything depends on tomorrow as to whether and for how long it goes on.
When the intelligence community leaks, obviously to influence the narrative, is this done by rogue agents, or is this done with official authorization, or both? I mean, stated differently, would they say the same thing to the New York Times that they say to the Washington Post?
Yes. I mean, there's a script that they read from. They favor one or the other depending on their mood. There are legitimate leaks, judges. You probably remember, wow, 20 years ago, just before the 2004 election, where George W. Bush was reelected, James Risen was in receipt of really dynamic, devastating leaks showing that the Bush administration was playing fast and loose with the Fourth Amendment. Now, Risen had that story several months before the election. He went to his New York Times people and they said, no, I better not do that, because Sulzberger has talked with George W. Bush. That would endanger our sources and methods. And so James Risen meekly waited until the following December, like December 2005. And then he published a story with Eric Lichtbau in the Times in December, and then his book came out. Risen did not rise to the occasion. And again, he's playing the same game. He had an article in The Intercept just over the weekend. It's really quite remarkable, because it even goes into charges that the Russians hacked the DNC emails prejudicial to Hillary Clinton. And that has been debunked by just about everybody. Only Risen is continuing to repeat the story. He'll serve whatever master is in being there. And it's a real commentary. After all, The Intercept was founded by people like Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald, for God's sake. And they saw what was going on. And Glenn is the only one, now this is 4 years ago, Glenn was the only one to carry the Hunter laptop story, namely that the FBI had it. The FBI knew there was not a Russian disinformation intelligence operation like 51 former intelligence directors said, and The Intercept would not let Glenn Greenwald publish that. And to his credit, a man of principle, he quit. He quit The Intercept that he co-founded. Now,
I for years I have been a big fan of Glenn Greenwald, not because we agree on nearly everything, but because he is a man of principle, and I commend him for that. But do the three-letter entities in the government, the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, the FBI, we all know what that is, the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, today's the day before Election Day. I know people are going to be watching this throughout the week. But do they expect us to believe that today, Russia, the government of Russia, is trying to influence the outcome of the presidential election in America tomorrow?
They expect us to believe that, Judge, and they're doing everything they possibly can to make us believe that. Now, you probably know that just 2 days ago, the three-letter agencies you mentioned, the FBI, the Department of the Department of Homeland Security, and others have come out with a memo.
The DNI, Avril Haines.
Yeah, right. April Haines, the overall guru. Okay, the DNI, the FBI, and a portion, a cyber portion of Department of Homeland Security. They came out with a thing saying, whoa, wait a second now, there's lots of election interference. And at the same time, who appears on Rachel Maddow but Victoria Nuland? And she says, Putin is at it again. She's at it again. And Rachel, she talks about how he's trying to influence. And then she says he got another tool this time, a more powerful tool. His name is Elon Musk. So they're at it again. The Russians are trying to form this, trying to interfere with the election. And I have to come back to Reiser because he has the most, he repeats every single debunked charge about the investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 election, to include hacking the DNC emails, which has been disproven by court testimony by the head of the cyber firm who was investigating that hacking, which wasn't hacking, but rather a copy onto a thumb drive and taken to WikiLeaks at the time.
Chris, can you look for the clip of Victoria Nuland? I think she's on Rachel Maddow's show. We ran it about a week ago. I know it's going to upset some of our viewers because she's not very popular with them, but we do have it. Here it is, Ray.
He's at it again. This time he's not even trying to hide his hand, and he has far more sophisticated tools. You know, his AI is better, so he can make these fake videos. He has done things like spend $10 million trying to buy American influencers and get them parroting his lines and not even know it's happening. But he's also got a brand new, very, very powerful tool, which is Elon Musk and X. You know, in 2020, the social media companies worked hard with the U.S. government to try to do content moderation, to try to catch this stuff as it was happening. But this time we have Elon Musk talking directly to the Kremlin and ensuring that every time the Russians put out something like this, it gets 5 million views on X before anybody can catch it. So it's quite dangerous. Although I do think the American electorate has gotten more sophisticated and more savvy about this stuff.
One of the viewers writes in, "Oh my God, Judge, I'm eating breakfast." All right. I know she's not that popular with those of us who put the program on and those of you who watch it. Does anything she's just said make any sense?
Well, it makes sense as to what they're trying to do, Judge. They're resurrecting this thing. You know, I did a little tweet over the weekend, and my webmaster who does my tweets he's a literary guy, and he was taken with alliteration. And what he said was the title, Ryzen raises a Russian hoax rerun. Ryzen raises a Russian hoax rerun. Well, you know, they think we're gullible, and I dare say most people that watch Rachel Maddow and have some very good friends who swear by her, you know, what they're parroting is what Ryzen has said here. I'll just mention him one more time. Here's the title of his article in The Intercept, okay, just 2 days ago. Here it is. Trump's campaign ties to Russia were no hoax. Oh, that sounds sort of defensive, doesn't it? Yeah. It says, look, this is happening again, and we ought to be unaware of it. And not only that, but here's the Washington Post on November 3rd. What's that, yesterday? Yeah, here it is. Russia feigns indifference over U.S. election, but is rooting quietly for Trump. Come on, give me a break. Putin, I've watched Putin for a long time, as I have other Russian and Soviet leaders. The thing he cares about is predictability. He has said that we ought to listen to him, okay? I think he gives a rat patootie as to who wins unless they're unpredictable. And I'll leave that to the viewer here to decide who he would prefer. I mean, unpredictable is the middle name of one of those candidates. Right. I don't think he favors him at all, but the intelligence community can assess.
What would the intelligence communities have to gain? Why do they want the American public to think that the Russians favor Donald Trump?
Oh my God, Trump! I mean, Judge. Look, the intelligence community, in the person of James Comey, the FBI, John Brennan of the CIA, and other.
I'm talking about the current intelligence community, not 4 and 8 years ago.
Well, these guys don't forget, Judge. Comey, Brennan, and their satraps are still around, okay? So with Trump realizing now that they did him in, or they tried to do him in 2016, they did him in 2020. Let me explain. This may not have been determinative, but you'll recall that Hunter Biden's laptop was uncovered several weeks before the election back in 2020, and it contained very damaging things, including reports of bribery or on the take by his dad as well as from Hunter. And what happened? Tony Blinken, Secretary of State now, called up Mikey Morell, former acting CIA director, and he said, Mikey, we're going to the last debate between Trump and Biden. We need something to put this to put this hack, to put this Hunter Biden laptop.
Right. And that produced the 50 or 51 former security officials swearing that it was a Russian hoax. None of them know anything about it personally.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the FBI had the laptop. Did any of those 51 people think to go in it? Is this? Do you have all the telltale signs of a Russian intelligence disinformation operation? No, they didn't. They just saluted, and I don't know, as I say, that couldn't have helped Trump. But Trump naively at that last debate, after this went down, he said, "What about that laptop?" And Biden was all primed, and he said, Mr. Trump, for God's sake, don't you realize that 50, over 50? So that's the way that went down in 2020. So the three-letter agencies, the people who are still around, Trump knows who they are. His vice presidential candidate has said he's gonna clean house, and there's a lot at stake, including the documents showing what happened to John F. Kennedy. This time, Trump says he's going to release them. He told lots of people he's going to release them. This time, he's really going to do it, he said, and they can't tolerate that. It's an institutional thing. You don't want to belong to an institution that assassinated.
So what do you, last question on this, unless your answer provokes more questions, what do you think these three-letter agencies think the Russians are doing? I mean, have there been fake ads on television that purport to be Harris vomiting on her shoes, but it's AI? Have there been fake ads of Trump on television purporting to show him as a mythical figure? What are they doing to influence the election?
Well, it's not only the three-letter agencies, it's the Attorney General, for God's sake. This was about a month ago. But they're talking about these plants, these things on the internet, Facebook, and so forth. Judge, the last time this went down in 2016, it turned out that the proportion of Facebook exposures with these ads was 0.0000001% of the content that American viewers or listeners were exposed to. When they indicted the people who were supposedly doing these interferences from St. Petersburg, they hired an American lawyer, and he did a court case about him, and they dropped the charges because they couldn't prove it. So it's all a hoax, just like James Risen says. It's not a hoax, it's a hoax, and it was a hoax. The problem is that these guys are going to really suffer if Trump wins, and who knows, maybe he'll win tomorrow.
As we speak, there's a major brouhaha going on in Tel Aviv over the leak of top secret Israeli national security / intelligence documents some of which purport to be from a laptop that purports to have been owned and operated by the now dead Hamas leader Sinwar, all of which purport to show Prime Minister Netanyahu in a favorable light. Some people have been accused. One person has been arrested. Fingers are pointing at the circle right around the Prime Minister. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, Judge. Laptops, faux laptops, make-believe laptops are one of the arrows in the quiver of the Mossad. The laptops were infamous for showing how close Iran was to a nuclear weapon. Laptops are manufactured. So we have an internecine warfare here in Tel Aviv. Netanyahu has to keep fighting, and he's a master at this to the degree that Mossad is helping in this effort. I see this mostly as a desperate attempt for Netanyahu to defend himself, because things are not going well on any of the three fronts: Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran.
Your friend and our colleague, Alistair Crook, agrees entirely with you, to the point where Netanyahu is crafting imaginary victories. Oh, we crushed Hamas. The hostages will soon be home. Let's go after Lebanon. Oh, we took care of Lebanon. It's now time to go after Iran. Oh, we did so much damage to Iran, they're not going to bother anybody. None of this stuff is true, even though some of it has been repeated in, of all places, the Wall Street Journal.
Well, of all places, the Wall Street Journal has been in the forefront of all this. I have to tell you, Judge, and our audience, that I deliberately avoid watching Alistair Crook early in the morning, because he is so good that I fear that I will, be guilty of false confirmation,
He's a big fan of yours, Ray McGovern.
Well, that's good to hear, because when I find myself in sync with Alistair, well, that's the best you can be. You had a real scoop from him on that attack, the three waves of attack. Yes. And that appears to be borne out by other things. But I also think that it's very true that the U.S. leaned on Netanyahu not to do what he wanted to do. I think that's provable. Now, just now, that is 2 days ago, Axios was told by some senior administration official that this time, no, they're not going to restrain Netanyahu. They're not going to restrain him. They're going to let him do what he wants to do. There will be no, what was the word? No calibration of an attack on Iran. And of course, we have the Iranian Khamenei saying just Saturday, there's going to be a bad attack. So I don't know what's going to happen, but hopefully tomorrow will throw new light on what's going on. And people, the main actors, the bad actors, as we say, will be able to determine what the pluses and minuses would be to have yet another round of escalation and another escalation.
Thank you, Ray. Always a pleasure, my dear man. Much appreciated. And we'll see you at the end of the week with Larry Johnson. All the best.
Thanks, Judge.
Of course.
Where Iran is threatening to retaliate against Israel. Nothing else, just some things to consider, things to run with, right? Okay, so what context do we have here? What's the kind of background that we have here? There's a couple of things. Number one, okay, we have the U.S. empire through its cat's paw, in my opinion. There are people who disagree. You know, the conversation is already there. Is Israel the separate country, separate from the United States, that somehow has its tentacles all over the United States, and it is total control of the United States, telling the U.S. what to do, owns the Congress, blah, 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 all of that. So Israel's this powerful little country the size of New Jersey, and the gigantic world empire wrapped around the world is all controlled by this little country the size of New Jersey. It's one perspective. The other perspective, which I happen to hold, is far different. It is this. It is that Israel is effectively a military outpost of an empire, that the United States has 900 of these military outposts around the world, right? And Israel is one of them, but in their opinion, the single most important. Because if you want to dominate the planet, which is the plan of the empire, if you want to dominate the planet, you must first dominate the lifeblood of the planet, which is oil. The lifeblood of everything, oil. And a lot of gas comes out of that too, but it's oil, oil, oil. They got to dominate oil. It's not an accident that a very few years after, I think it was 2012, 11, whatever. Well, I mean, 1911, 12, somewhere around that, the Brits who created the whole Israel thingy, they decided that they were going to switch all of their ships will now be switched over to running on oil. No sailing, no nothing, right? And shortly after, they decided to create Israel. Coincidence, right? Hey, oil's going to be what it's all about. You know, come to think of it, it would be really nice if the Jews had a homeland in that big part of the world where all the oil happens to be coming out of, right? Don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence. So what happens now? So now the U.S. sees this military intelligence, all of the above, the Mossad, 8200, the Mossad and the CIA work together. All of those things are not an accident. The CIA and the Mossad don't work together. They are one entity. The U.S. empire has a base, a military outpost, and it is Israel. And I argue this, it benefits the U.S. empire for people to believe that they are controlled by Israel because they now have plausible deniability. There's a difference between me sticking a knife in someone and me saying, I don't want them to do it. That person is the one that stuck a knife in them. Did you give them the knife? Yeah. Did you tell them where the victim would be? Yeah, fair enough. Did you pay them to knife the victim? Yes. But I didn't really want it to happen. It just, I don't know. They're out of control. I can't control them. Yes. Do I give them the weapons? Fair enough. Do I give them the intelligence? Fair enough. Do I even give them a couple of thugs to go help hold the guy down while the knife? Yeah, sure enough. Do I pay for their lawyer? Do I do everything I can to help them get out? If they're witnesses, do I help kill the witnesses? Sure. But they're in control of me. I have nothing to do with this. I'm just an innocent guy here being dragged around. So it benefits. I'm arguing those of you out there who say Israel's this evil thing and the nice poor little United States empire doesn't want to go along with it, but they're dragged around by the bad guys. You are benefiting and pushing a narrative which helps to the U.S. empire to separate itself from responsibility from its deeds. Good cop, bad cop. They're doing it. It's so obvious now where the Israel bombs something, boom, kills a bunch of innocent people. And then the world says, hey, U.S., Israel did it. And U.S. is like, we tried to tell them not to, but we couldn't stop them. So I don't know what to do. We'll give them some more bombs. Maybe that'll stop them. And then we find out later on, well, Tony Blinken was sitting in a meeting with those people and he said, yeah, let's do it. But meanwhile, we didn't want them. Imagine Israel doing such terrible things. Oh, we're totally against him. Netanyahu's a bad guy. He's out of control. What are we going to do? Besides, oh, really? How are you going to deal with that? Well, we'll give them more bombs and protect them a little bit more, help them, give them the intelligence to attack some people that we don't want them to attack. Whatever you do, or Israel, do not attack Iran. Don't fire at Iran, do anything like that. That's just trouble. Hold off, Israel. Oh, really? Well, how are you going to make sure that Israel doesn't attack Iran? Well, we're going to give them the intelligence to attack Iran. We're going to help them with the planes. We're going to refuel them with our refuelers. We're going to do everything we can to facilitate this, to make it happen, use our bombs, use our missiles, everything we're going to do to make this happen. And then we'll say, oh, these crazy Israelis, they're just out of control. I wish they'd listen to us. Come on. The naivety of some people who are looking at this is, I find astounding, but it is what it is, right? So let's continue. So what happens after all of that? The U.S. using its cat's paw, Israel, they are doing things to Iran. This is basically the things they were doing, like killing people in Iran and attacking Iran's consulate, was under a context in which the U.S. had total domination over the region, over the world, and nobody would dare push back. That I can just walk up and slap you and you would not dare. You would be terrified. You just hang your head in shame and walk away because you're afraid to push back. That was the old context. And in that context, it was rational for the U.S. to do those kind of things, because in that context, they had total domination and they wanted to maintain total domination. And the one way to maintain domination is every now and then slap your enemies and remind them who's in charge. And when the rest of the world sees you slap your enemy and they see your enemy does do nothing, then the rest of the world will get the message. They are in charge. And we know that because Iran's scared to death of them. So we might as well be too. Nobody dare push back against the U.S. empire. And how do we know it? Because they slap Iran and Iran does nothing back. Now, 2020 was the beginning of a changed paradigm. They killed Soleimani, the U.S., and Iran was able to hit some bases and the U.S. couldn't stop them, even though they knew they were coming. Well, that was a new paradigm, wasn't it? Iran's willing to slap back and able. Okay, as time went on, the U.S. had to reestablish that. I think that's one of the reasons why Israel did some dirty deeds to Iran. It wasn't that, look, they so-called killed some Iranian nuclear scientists. They know as well as I know that Iran wasn't creating nuclear weapons, and that if they wanted to, they could. So let's not argue that Israel was killing Iranian scientists in order to stop a nuclear weapon. Look, you can go through and search and you'll find article after article over the years that says over and over, the U.S. intelligence agencies determined that Iran is not weaponizing their nuclear program. You'll find that year after every couple of years, the intel agencies say that. Now, so since Israel and the U.S. knew that, let's not argue that they were doing that to stop or slow up Iran's nuclear process or plans. Or weapons program. They were doing it to establish dominance, to show we can do what we want to Iran anytime we want, and they won't do anything back. They knew that they weren't creating a bomb, but it was to establish dominance in the region and in the world, to show I can every now and then. Who was it? One of the neocons said, every now and then we got to grab a little country and slam it up against the wall so the rest of the world will know we can do it, right? They're extremely evil, but that's the way they think. And that's what this was. They'd kill a scientist, they'd blow something up in Iran. They would do something to establish dominance, to remind Iran, the region, and the world that they were dominant, right? All right. So that is the context we're working, right? This is we've got to, the U.S. empire every now and then has to do something to Iran. Iran is a punching bag. Got to remind everybody we're in charge, right? Well, 2020, Iran hits back and the U.S. doesn't do that much. And the world's like, and the region's like, right? Okay, and Iran says, we want to throw you out of the region at a time and place of our choosing, but you're getting out of here. Okay, there's where we are. So this conflict recently starts, and the Israelis are like, oh, great, this is our time. The so-called Israelis, the U.S. empire, the neocons are all lit. This is our time. Let's feel our way through this, but we got to take Iran out now. Okay, we know what happens. Israel does some dirty deeds to Iran, and Iran establishes twice, not in a context of history, not in a context of dominant, not in any context, in the physical world, right? There can be every context in the world about how I can beat you or not beat you in a fight, how I can win a fight or you can win it. But there's all of those things are fine. But when it comes to like, okay, come on, and the guy just punches you in the face, you got your dukes up, man. You are ready to fight. And a fist. I used to watch fights. You know, I can remember watching old videos of Muhammad Ali fights, right? And both of them, they put him up, right? And he's boxing a guy. And early in the fight, his left jab just comes out and just snaps him. Pop! That jab just comes out, snap, and the guy's head snaps. And the guy's got his hands up, and he wants to react, and he's ready to fight. At that moment, he realizes he can hit me with that damn jab, and he's so much faster than I am. I can't defend myself from the jab. If I move my hands up to do that, he's going to take my body out. There's nothing I can do, right? It is an establishment of complete and total dominance. He just said, this fight's over. You know, buddy, you're in decent trouble. I can just jab you all day long. There's nothing you can do. I'm too fast, right? So that's in the physical world. We can talk all we want to about in the fight. Yeah, I'm going to do this. When we get in and that jab snaps my head back and I'm like, holy crap, nothing I can do. I can't even see it coming, right? That's physical domination that has been established. So here's my point. After all the talk and all of this, Israel, they bomb a consulate, they do an assassination in Tehran, what have you. Okay. And Iran says, I'm going to hit you. Now, they've already done it one time, and people are like, was that a fluke? In April, was it a fluke? What was going on there, right? In the spring. Iran says, all right, you can get it now, buddy. So they fire all kinds of high-tech stuff, and they smack the daylights out of Israel. And it is clear and obvious to all onlookers that jab is hitting Israel so fast that his head snaps back, and there's nothing they can do but take that jab right to the friggin' eye socket. Whap, 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 right? And what can they do? That they can't stop Iran at this point. Iran established technological superiority in the physical and kinetic world. And now the entire world's looked at that and said, whoa, holy crap. The dynamics have changed. And there's no way that you can fake out the physical world. There's no way that you can fake out reality. People see, and I mean, videos are everywhere. Missiles are coming in, and you can't stop them. So now Israel, what can they do? They can try, okay, great. We've got some technological stuff. We'll fix them. We're going to hit them back. Why? Because you cannot, Israel, U.S. empire knows as well as I do. They established technological, physical, kinetic superiority. This is not just between these two countries. They all know the world is watching. And the U.S. knows. We've been the bully on this playground, and everybody, all the other kids on the playground are looking. We get our butts kicked. We ain't the bully on the playground nowhere, not just here. Okay, so I'm saying all that. I'm going somewhere with this. Don't leave me. Going somewhere with this. So Israel plans and the U.S. plans their move, and the U.S. We're trying to get Israel not to do this. So it appears to me in some way, shape, or form, they planned an attack. Everything we see now points to a thwarted attack. We don't have anything 100% solid, but all the evidence points to Israel attempting some kind of a missile attack on Iran and having it thwarted. It also points to Israel planning a larger attack, but the beginning of the attack was thwarted, and therefore they couldn't do the larger attack. We're going to come in. We're going to take out some of your air defense capabilities. That's going to allow our planes to fly in and do their dirty deeds and blow up some areas. And then we can say, ha, 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 look at that. We have reestablished technical, kinetic, physical domination. Okay, that was the plan. They go in. It certainly appears as though, as you probably already know, they were unable to suppress the air defense systems, and therefore the rest of the attack had to be called off. Worst case scenario, even best case scenario, for Israel, they fired some missiles at Iran, and those missiles were for the most part shot down, and they hit a couple of old nothings. It was not a successful attack. So what do we have now? Iran has established we had a successful attack against you. You couldn't stop us, but we can stop you. That's where we are. So what can Israel, what can the U.S. empire do then? They can try narrative control. They can't do anything in the physical world, so they can now go to what they also feel is critical, soft power, right? So now they put out all of these articles, even though it was thwarted. Oh, we bashed Iran to pieces. We tore them to shreds. We had them on the ropes. We pummeled them. We scratched them, bit them, clawed their eyes out, pulled their hair out, grabbed their head and slammed it on a turnbuckle like we do in WWF, right? Oh, we put it on them sons of bitches. They got it this time. Ha, ha, ha. We won. You didn't. But that's all you got left, right? So now, okay, in a way, the from the Iranians' perspective, the question has been posed to them, right? Okay, you punched, you were effective. We punched back, we wasn't effective. Your turn. See, the U.S. empire isn't thinking like your turn. It's thinking the Iranians are afraid of us. Therefore, we're just going to say, we won in the soft power. We won in the PR field. We're going to claim a victory, walk away. And then they said to the Iranians, let's just leave it at that. You know, hey, let's just walk away. Nobody else has to get hurt. You hit them, they hit you back. You know what kills me? It's always like this. It's one of these things. It's like, don't stoop to my level, right? I punch you first. Then you hit me back, whap. Then I punch you a second time. Remember, I punch first. A second time, whap, I punch you. And then I say, hey, let's call it even. Really? So you punch me, I punch back, you punch me a second time, and then say, let's call it even because you got in 2 punches and I got in 1. Yeah. That's what the U.S. did. Well, you know, guys, hey, everybody's got their punches in. Let's just walk away. Why? Because they still established domination. We punched last. And we claimed that it was a successful punch in the PR. Told all the Americans, told everybody, hey, everybody, we won that one. Then we walk away. Okay, we got the last punch in. Let's call it even. I think the Iranians understand the importance of the narrative in the context of this particular battle because it's for the control of their region, and that is critical in ultimately, long-term, ejecting the U.S. from the region and throttling the power of their Israeli cat's paw proxy. So Iran, if you think about it now, in a way, they're in the driver's seat. And in a way, it makes sense for them to punch back, right? Because let's just say now that we go into this back and forth. As Andre Martianev said, they're I don't know, 2,000 kilometers apart, some 1,200 kilometers, whatever, a long ways. And that's as the crow flies. If the crow has to go around the airspace of a bunch of countries that say we don't want to be involved, it becomes a lot further flight, right? Okay. So now all they can really do is throw things at each other. We're going to throw things at each other. And that's what we decided. That's what our war is going to be. You're going to throw some missiles at us. We're going to throw some missiles at you. But we've determined that we can block most of your missiles and you can't really block any of ours. So from the perspective of Iran, if I'm in Iran and I say, so let me understand this. If I attack you again with missiles, you're going to shoot back. Yes. But mine are going to land. And for the most part, yours aren't, right? Yeah. And we can keep going back and forth where I fire missiles that hit their targets and you fire missiles that for the most part don't, right? Yes. Yeah, I think that'll work. Let's do it. See, if I'm Iran, I'm like, so that's the dynamic. I get to knock the living rat crap out of you with missiles, maybe every 2 or 3 weeks. And then you get some weak counterattack, some weak response that I get to shoot down and laugh at and belittle and denigrate your ability to strike me. That's what we're gonna do. Yeah, I'm in for give me a slice of that pie. So now Iran is in a situation like we're gonna punch the crap out of you. And we're not afraid of a massive response. Why would Iran be afraid of a massive response? Israel can't do a massive response. Let me add this. So I know what you say. Well, Israel may use nukes. This is my belief. If in fact I am right, and I am. But, you know, I could always be wrong. If in fact I am right, and Israel is the cat's paw, is the, what's the term I want to look at? The political and military tool of the U.S. empire that it is. If I'm right about that, Israel can't fire those nukes unless they got permission. A lot of people don't want to believe that because they're so into Israel's the boss and we ain't, and I don't believe that. I believe that's what the U.S. wants everybody to believe, so they'll have plausible deniability for the actions that they constantly order Israel to take and order Israel takes. But I do think that what we're looking at here is the Iranians saying, look, we're sitting here, and if you do that, you already know it's a suicide bomb. You already know that if you fire, number one, if you fire a nuke at us, it ain't going to take out our nuclear sites. It might likely very well get shot down before it gets here. There, at that point, it's game, set, and match, because we're going to flatten all the bases, right? American bases. You will be that the quickest way for you to get ejected from the region is to fire a nuke. Because if Israel fires a nuke at us, every U.S. base will be vaporized in minutes. What they'll do is they'll nuke the U.S. right out of the region. Number one. Number two, we're going to nuke your all your bases are gone, so forget that's done. Every one of them, they will be obliterated. Any ship that U.S. has in the region will be struck with missiles, everything. And what do you think Hamas is going to do? What do you think Yemen's going to do? Any ship, anything you have in the region will be targeted. The ramifications of firing a nuke will be unimaginable for the U.S. empire. The U.S. empire will be crippled. And now, let me add this, and we're going to take out your economy. You should fire a nuke at us, we nuke your economy, because guess what we're going to do to the oil infrastructure in the region? And if Yemen can close down the Red Sea, what do you think we can do in the Straits of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf, where 30% of the world's oil comes out? Now, as soon as you do this, you'll ask yourself a question. Man, it's kind of hard to get oil from the Persian Gulf. Where can people get oil from? I think Russia sells oil and gas, don't they? You do that, and Russia becomes the oil and gas hub of the world. And they're selling it to India, and they're selling it to China, and whoever buys from Russia will have to do what Russia said. We'll have to abide. Russia will say, well, you can't buy our oil. Anybody, no countries that now are participating in U.S. sanctions can buy all of our oil, and you can't get it hardly anywhere else. And what else happens then? Venezuela's got oil, don't they? And a lot of it. So now people got to start building refineries for Venezuelan oil, buying them. See what I mean? You've caused yourself a big problem, because now you've terminated the Middle East as the oil-rich region of the world, and it's now Russia and Venezuela. And even if it were the oil-rich region of the world, because the oil can't get out, you don't dominate it because all your bases are gone. It is to fire a nuke at Iran is to nuke the economy of the U.S. and its allies, is to nuke the political stability of the U.S. and its allies, because that's gone. I mean, people walk out here tomorrow, we got hyperinflation, or that things are going to go to hell quick. And all that stuff about we're going to run the world, you won't be able to run yourself at home. You're in deep trouble. So that's not a real good, strong option at this point. But for Iran, let's say they smack the snot out of Israel with missiles. Well, now the U.S. has to think. What do we do? Does the U.S. want to get involved? Does Iran may hit U.S. bases. It may hit U.S. targets. From Iran's perspective, we'll hit what we want. Now try us. Because again, what is a horrible disaster for the U.S. and Israel to say, you sons of guns, you hit us, we're really going to let you have it now. And they come in again for another swipe. and that gets sorted. They come in for another swipe. We're going to come in this time. We're going to send in 250 planes and blah, blah, blah. And Iran just sits back and says, send them, send them, send them. Let's see how this works out. We're ready for a fight. Are you? And you know you're in deep and serious trouble. You know you can't take out our air defenses. You can't do that. So now you have to fly into an integrated air defense zone with electronic warfare capabilities. You got to send these planes into the most hottest, into the hottest conflict zone they could ever imagine, and you're going to lose a lot of them. And now what? You're in war, and now what? As soon as you do that, the cost of gas and fuel, the instability alone drives the prices through the region, through the roof, and you are in a world of crap, and the people at home are saying, what's going on? Might I add this, and this is important. If the U.S. decides they want to go to war, right? Can you imagine what would happen if the U.S. said, now we're going to have a draft? That'd tear this country apart. Do you know there's so many young people that say, you got to be shitting me. I'm going to go fight for Israel? Good luck with that. And a lot of young people in this country that are so pissed at the government, they've had it up to here with the government, that hate the government, that immediately after an election where half of the country is going to be furious, half of the country is going to say, ha ha, we're in charge. The other half is going to say, oh no, it was stolen. I don't care who wins. The other half is going to say it was stolen. You know that, and they ain't going to be happy. So you're going to take this country to war in the Middle East. We're going to go to war in the Middle East where all the oil is. At a time that our economy has been totally wrecked, our country is unstable. People don't trust the government. People don't think about that. People don't trust the media. People don't trust the traditional institutions. And now you're going to say we're going to take our country to war at that time. Might I add, you've demilitarized yourself in Ukraine. Even if you want to go to war, you don't have the industrial capability to build all of the things that you need to be in a war in the Middle East, much less anywhere else. And might I add, you still got a Ukraine problem. So now you're going to have to go to war in the Middle East at a time that you have the Ukraine problem, at a time that going to war in the Middle East will wipe out your economy. You're going to wipe out your economy and go to war in a region that makes it even more, your economy more stressed. If your economy is wiped out because of oil, what do? You got to get the oil up and flowing again as quick as possible. But instead, you're going to go to war in that region, so you can't possibly get the oil up and flowing again. Your economy, everything's crashing and collapsing around you. The people at home saying, I can't eat, I can't pay anything. Oh my God, we got hyperinflation. You've created the disaster of all disasters. So if Iran strikes, a nuclear attack by Israel through the U.S. or whatever the case may be is political, economic, you name it, suicide. And then what are the Russians going to do? How are the Chinese going to respond? Might they get in? And again, what's going to happen in Ukraine? Because at that point, Ukraine's going to say, oh crap, we're not getting anything. The U.S. is completely focused on that. What are we going to do? They're going to have to surrender, or Russia's going to continue to go through them like a hot knife going through butter. So there's not a lot of options. So in a way, it makes sense for the Iranians to take this punch right now. Now that we have actually determined, it appears to me that Iran can hit U.S. interests and that U.S. interests can't hit back successfully. It makes sense for Iran to say, let's see how this plays out and let's go back and forth a while. We'll see who gets tired first. Let's throw stuff back and forth for a while. We think you can't stop ours. We think we can. And since Iran has also taken on the mantle of protector of the Palestinians, defender of the Palestinians, Iran can also weaken Israel, right? They can hit bases. They can hit troop formations. They can hit military assets. So Iran can say, you're going to throw some missiles at us and ain't going to do any damage. But you're at war a bunch of places. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to plaster your airfields and ammo dumps, things like that. We're going to make it harder for you to continue to fight Hezbollah. Very, very difficult for that. And if you get too froggy, we'll take out other stuff too. We'll take out your ports. We'll take out whatever we need to take out. We're going to hurt you. But they can every strike, they can hurt Israel bad. And if they want to, they can really hurt Israel, because what they can do is they can hit Israel power plants. And at that point, the people in Israel start no longer being the people in Israel, and they start being the people in back wherever the hell, in Brooklyn or Moscow or the Paris or whatever, Cyprus, they're out of there. So right now, I can make an argument. I'm not saying I am a person of peace and I prefer a peaceful resolution to everything, but I think that there is a rational argument for Iran now that they have seemingly determined some technological and military superiority. There is a rational reason for them to strike out and to return fire on Israel and see if Israel, and just let Israel know, look, this is the dance we're playing. You hit us first, which means we get to hit last. And as long as you can't accept that, we'll just keep doing this dance. See what happens. See how it works out. Okay. Meanwhile, we'll keep pressure on you from all our other allies. Now, the question becomes, and there's a question, because right now people are looking at the U.S. empire and they're saying they don't seem to be acting in a rational manner, right? What are they doing? They've got this, they're over here picking fights, you know, they're going sailing through the Taiwan Strait every now and then, sending weapons to Taiwan, picking fights with China. Ooh, we're going to put more sanctions on China, blah, 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 right? Tariffs, things of that nature. At the same time, they're engaged in a proxy war in Ukraine that they are losing, that's going real bad, and that has demilitarized NATO. Really, NATO's running out of stuff. Demilitarized NATO and impoverished the European continent, and it's that military spending is inherently inflationary. So it's driving up inflation. It's doing all bad, nothing good, right? They got to struggle with that, and it's driving the resistance, worldwide resistance against the U.S. empire together, making them tighter, stronger, and a greater, for lack of a better term, threat to U.S. imperialism. Okay, so you got China, you got a war you lost here, and now you're in the Middle East, and all of these things are triggering U.S. Both military capability and military stockpiles. So a rational thing to do would be to try to turn down the volume somewhere. But the U.S. is not acting in a rational manner, is it? Or isn't it? Let's talk about that a little bit. Rationality I'll put it like this. There's what appears to be rational to me, and there's what appears to be rational to the person who does it. Right? So if I believe something that's absurd, paradoxically, if I believe something, if the context of my life is absurd, then my rational actions will be absurd to the outside observer, but to me, they're perfectly rational in the context of what I believe to be true, right? If I believe that there are such things as werewolves, then for me to put certain things, hang silver outside of my house, wear silver, carry silver around, things like that, do things that stop a werewolf. What do they got? A pentagram or something you're supposed to put that stops a werewolf in these werewolf movies? I don't know, whatever. You've seen them all. But for me to take actions to protect myself from werewolves is perfectly rational to me, because I believe in werewolves. If I believe in werewolves, it's rational to act to protect myself. In fact, it's irrational not to act in the context of a person who believes in werewolves, or whatever the case may be. If you believe that if somebody's trying to kill you, then it makes sense. If you believe things in the context of your system of beliefs, whatever you do to address that is perfectly rational. And other people are going to say that's irrational. In their context, it is. In the physical and intellectual world, it is. In the emotional world that I live in, I'm afraid that a werewolf's going to get me, right? It's not irrational. It's not irrational. To me, it makes sense. Okay, why do I say all that? Because rationality has to be viewed through a context, and it has to be viewed through two lenses, the lens of the actor and the lens of the observer. The observer is going to look at it, and oftentimes will say that is irrational. And to the observer at the time, based on how they said, they'll say that doesn't make sense. And then later on, you'll look at what the person did, and you'll go, oh, now I see. Yeah, that's a stupid move. Why are you doing that, Garland? Because werewolves are going to get me. Oh, yeah, you've seen the movies. Oh, you're stupid. God, but there's no such thing as werewolves. Yeah, I got to do this because otherwise, when the moon comes up, I'll be torn to shreds by a werewolf. You and your stinking werewolves. Now, to me, it's perfectly rational. To you, who are saying there's no such thing as werewolves, it's irrational, right? And you're like, what an idiot. Can you believe this? So later on, we're sitting there and it hits about 11 o'clock at night and the clouds go aside and I look out the window. Oh, there's that full moon. And you're like, you and your werewolf. Garland, you're completely irrational. And a few minutes later, way deep in the woods, we hear something go, whoa. And he looks at me and it's like, you know, in hindsight, hanging all of those silver implements outside of the entrances to this house wasn't as irrational as I thought it was, right? His context has changed. He heard the howl of a werewolf, and now he says, hey, you know what? Thanks a lot, pal. I'm sure glad I'm here, right? Instead of up the street at the Slaughtered Lamb bar, right? We all saw An American Werewolf in London. Great movie. Anyway, but if you didn't see An American Werewolf in Paris, that one was good too. But at any rate, so you see my point. It made no sense to me until I heard the werewolf howl. Then all of a sudden, I saw the light, right? My point being, if no werewolf howled, we'd get up the next morning and you'd say, you idiot, I told you. Full moon, no howling of werewolves. Hello, right? So my point is, emotionally speaking, intellectually speaking, and physically speaking, there are various contexts for rationality. And then you have to take into the context of the observer versus the actor, right? So if we look at the neocons, right, their context is 1991. The Soviet Empire has fallen and it's hegemon time. The US is in charge of everything. We have bases everywhere. We attacked Iran, but remember this, we attacked Iraq and we showed these smart bombs and smart missiles and all these things that people hadn't seen before. And we demonstrated our domination so that countries were afraid to mess with us, screw with us. Please don't mess with them. They'll blow you to smithereens. There's nothing you can do, right? And so from the neocons, from the imperialists, the neocons, whatever you want to call them, the neoliberals' perspective, they're still living there. And they have total domination. In the context that you do have total domination, you can do whatever you want to because nobody can stop you and nobody can push back. Now, is there an intellectual context to that? Not really. Not really. Because the intellectual context, you would have to take into account, you would have to collect data. Okay, we are the world hegemon and we have power. What evidence do we have? And we can exercise military power against anybody anytime we want to. And what is the evidence that we have? Well, you'd look at it, but then you'd say, wait a minute, Russia has hypersonic missiles. China has way more ships and this and that. We don't have the industrial capacity, blah, blah, blah. And when you went through an intellectual exercise, at the end, you would be forced to conclude that we don't have the dominant power that we would like to believe that we do. But this ain't an intellectual exercise for the neoliberal, imperialists, neocons, we're globalists, whatever term you want to use that fits your ideological perspective on the world. For these assholes, let's go there. Kinetic, physical and intellectual contexts can't exist. It has to be emotional, right? And here's the issue you end up with. You end up with a contradiction wherein there's no continuity between your emotional belief, right, that you're so powerful. When they talk to Congress, look at what Congress says. We've got to do this. Congress, the ultimate hawks, right? We've got to do strikes on Russia. Why? I remember somebody saying we should strike Russia's Crimea. and blow them to smithereens, and that'll give them a taste of our medicine every now of their own medicine. Every now and then, these idiots in Congress will speak up about what we should do to Russia or China or whoever. But if you listen to them, we should do this to Russia, blow up Crimea, firing missiles, blah, blah, blah. In that context, Russia has no way to shoot those missiles down. And then Russia has no way to respond because they're weak and they're stupid and they're intellectually inferior, right? Why? It doesn't make sense that we should fire some tomahawks at Crimea and do whatever we want, blow up some of their stuff and put them in their place. It does if we have if we have military, physical domination over them to a point where they're frightened and horrified. But if we don't, it don't make much sense, does it? It's rational in the world that they have to live in on Capitol Hill, which is one where we're still dominant. It's rational to do more sanctions against countries, China, Russia, everybody. Why? In a context where we are fiscally, right, dominant on the world. Yeah, we sanction people or they do what they want. We still, it's the whole thing is this: we still have so much military and economic dominance that we can force people to do what we want. That when it comes down to it, if we say do what we want and you don't, we have the capacity to force you to do it. So from that perspective, and that's only an emotional view. It is no longer an intellectual view, because if you ask experts, they will say, well, based on what I saw between Iran and Israel, it ain't working out. Based on what I saw in Ukraine, that's not going to work. Based on what China has, their industrial capacity, their military capacity in their region, we can't dominate them in their region. Now think about this. We can't dominate China militarily in their region. We can't dominate Russia militarily in their region, particularly, and we can't dominate Iran militarily in their region. So that means, first of all, if we just view those three as regional powers only, we can't dominate them in their region. But when it comes to Russia and China, particularly, they are world powers. They have the capacity to strike us at home. They have the capacity militarily to wipe out the United States, just like we can wipe them out. They have the capacity to hurt us economically really bad if they choose. Russia could say, we're not selling you certain things, right? We'll take a punch. We'd like to have it, but we'd like to have that money, but we're not. They can cut us off with some very important things. And same with Europe, same with China. China has the capacity to hurt us really, really bad in a lot of areas. So we don't have the economic, we don't have the physical domination over either one of those. So the rational idea that we're acting against lesser powers is no longer a valid context. So to the actor on Capitol Hill, in Congress, on Foggy Bottom at the State Department, in the White House. Remember Joe Biden when they said, well, could we possibly do two wars at once? Are you kidding me? He was upset about it. We are the United States of America. We're the most powerful country that ever was, that ever will be. We are it, dude. We could go to war with Russia, China, you name it, all of them. What are you talking about? Now, at the time, he hadn't taken into account industrial capacity and hypersonic missiles and air defense systems and all these other things. He just lived in an intellectual world where we got to be the boss. And Joe Biden said that. And that was one of the times that's going to be, to me, viewed historically as a landmark, as a benchmark, a landmark time when it was obvious that the U.S. was done. When people said, look at China and Russia and Iran. Can you really want to tangle with them? We'll brush them off like flies off the back of a horse. You kidding me? Russia, China, and Iran, indeed, we are the power. At that point, they were done because they did not have an understanding of their limits. If you're going to be involved in a conflict, the first rule of conflict is never underestimate your adversary. If you read Sun Tzu, right, you have to know yourself. You know your adversary. If you don't know either or both, you've lost that war before it started. Oh, we can defeat Iran, even though in the real world, they've already showed that they can put a hurt on us in a hurry. Yes, we can defend ourselves from Iran. Look, we just put a THAAD terminal, high altitude air defense system in Israel. If the Iranians want to wipe it out, they can in one fell swoop. I mean, it looks good at home. If you're talking to the Americans, hey, American people, look what we just did. And Americans are like, oh, wow, a THAAD system. I don't even know what the hell it is, but whatever it is, it sounds high tech. It probably costs a lot of billions. Oh, the Iranians are in trouble now. They're going to get it now. But the Pentagon's like, yeah, we got like a couple dozen missiles for the THAAD system. And by the way, the Iranians can send in drones and they can send in enough missiles in the first 2 minutes to run us out of missiles. Remember, when a system, an air defense system, fires to stop a missile, an incoming object, bogey, when it does, it fires 2 to 1. So however many missiles they fire, however many missiles you have, you only got half as many as you think, because you got to fire 2 to 1. It's to include. I once saw it something like if you fire 1, the probability of stopping the missile is like 25%. If you fire 2, it goes up to like 80% or something like that. So it's so dramatically higher if you fire 2 missiles. It's a system. I mean, mathematically speaking, it has to fire 2 missiles to stop. To give you the probability, a high enough probability, one that you can have faith in to get rid of the missile. Right now, I mean, I have my percentages exactly right, but it's something like that. It's a dramatic increase in the probability of taking out the missile once the computer comes up with a firing solution mathematically. And then it has to, but that even that firing solution that the computer comes up with is based on 2 missiles, not 1. The foundation of these anti-missile defenses are 2 missiles, not 1. And we don't have the industrial capacity to come to make 1 half the time. So my point being, any way you look at it, what is it? Your body is you're writing your mouth is writing a check that your body can't cash, right? What is the other one? A Tweety bird? What is it? An alligator mouth and a Tweety bird ass. So we're doing a lot of talking, and we have a context in which there's domination, but that context does not exist in the physical world. And now there we are. And so can the U.S. empire be rational? Based on the actor, based on themselves, they can they're perfectly, it's another thing. They're perfectly rational in a world where the U.S. still maintains economic, military, and diplomatic domination. Yes. Even though, and you'll hear Israel say, well, everybody's going to hate us, but we got to do what we got to do. I've heard Israelis say that. I've seen video. Well, yes, the world's going to hate us, but we got to do what we got to do. We don't care about that. Now, even that is rational. Evil, fair enough, but rational, because in a world where you can dominate people, if you're an evil person, what do you give a crap if they like it or not? I don't care if you like it. There's nothing you can do about it. I got too much power. They got Uncle Sam, right? So their perspective is, are people going to hate us? Sure. Are they going to want to do us dirty? Fair enough. But nothing they can do about it. We don't care. If people hate you, you care about it if they can hurt you, if they can do something physically to you, if they can cut you off. The U.S., Israelis are simply, we got the U.S. We are the U.S. and we know it. And so if you want to try to do anything to hurt us, you got to do something to hurt the U.S. because we are the U.S. and it ain't going to be easy. And we have domination. So what do we care? We'll do whatever we want. Pariah means nothing to the dominant force. You'll be a pariah. The Israelis are like, to who? To who? Really? What do you think? Countries are going to come in and say, we won't do business with Israel. We don't want to talk to Israel. The U.S. will then sanction them into poverty. They ain't going to do it. They're afraid to even try us. So that's perfectly rational to them. To the observer, I look at it and say, dude, you don't have that kind of power. U.S. doesn't have that kind of power anymore. It's not rational to me. And they're like, yes, it does. So shut up. Okay. Which means when you have an inconsistency between your worldview and the physical, kinetic reality, at some point that contradiction will be borne out. At some point, that incongruity will be borne out when the rubber meets the road. And I think what Iran is doing really is they're making the rubber meet the road sooner rather than later. Rather than say, and I think Iran feels like this, look, we're getting to that point. I think Iran feels like, and I'm saying Iran, just using that metaphorically speaking, Iran, the leaders of Iran, the leaders of resistance, whoever you want to call them. I'm just going to use the word Iran. And I think it's rational. The time's coming when this question is going to be called, right? When this ticket is going to be punched, right? At some point, this incongruity between the US/Israel's worldview and their ability in the physical world, at some point, that question is going to be called. It's going to be called when they get froggy with China. It's going to be called when, think about this, it's going to be called when at some point the Ukrainian lines crumble and Russia's overrunning everything and Ukraine's falling apart and Ukraine starts screaming to NATO, help, 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 bail me out, we're getting crushed, and NATO has to make a decision. That question is going to be called then. And then US keeps building around and Taiwan, and at some point China says, all right, look, it's over. You got an option. You gonna fight over Taiwan or not? We're taking it now. We're surrounding it. If you're gonna fight over Taiwan, it's decision time. That's a time that the question will be called. So is it going to be called in Ukraine? It's possible. Is it going to be called in China? Both things eventually at some point, right? You're going to be losing those, and you got a decision to make how you're going to address it. And I think China, Iran's position, and probably if you think about it, if you're Russia, if you're China, if you're the alliances with Iran, in reality, doesn't it make sense, more sense, to have that question called sooner rather than later and with a non-nuclear power, so that it will be harder for the West to justify using nukes against a non-nuclear power that you've been claiming they can't have nukes because they're irresponsible? And they have a more than adequate air defense, but if you're Russia, you can soup their air defense up. You can soup their defensive capabilities up by giving them some extra stuff in a way that makes it embarrassingly hard for the West to punch them. You don't have to have a full clash between two nuclear powers, right? Which everybody dies if that happens. So in a weird way for the world, it's safer if this contradiction between the US's worldview, the neocon worldview, the neocon's belief in their power and domination, this contradiction, this incongruity between that and their capabilities in the physical world, if that question is called, if that question is put to the test in Iran, as opposed to having that question put to the test in Ukraine or in and around Taiwan or the Korean Peninsula, it's oddly enough probably safer for the entire world as a whole, because we all die if there's a nuclear confrontation. So I think that and let me add one other thing. And the added value is that the US in the real world and in real time knows they're gambling with their economic survival. And so that if they step wrong, if they step on the wrong landmine, that war won't even be on or over. That conflict will be maybe heating up, but they won't have an economy. And the entire West and world will be looking at them, including their citizens, saying, all this for Israel? I'm in the United States. I got hyperinflation to deal with. I need a wheelbarrow full of dollars just to buy a wheelbarrow, to carry my wheelbarrow full of dollars, just to go to the store and buy a dozen eggs. Is this worth it? What the hell are you people doing? I want peace, and I want it now. I want you to do something about my life. That now the U.S. is taking a thrashing, and it needs to institute a draft to continue with war. And as soon as they say we're going to draft everybody, and half of the young people, or 60% or 70% of the young people, say, you got to be freaking kidding me if you think I'm going to war for you idiots. Internal stability, internal collapse of the empire, decisions to be made that are existential decisions. That could create internal uprising that can't be overcome. Tough times for the empire to put themselves in this position and to pretend that they're being rational when they're being emotional. Interesting stuff, don't you think? Very interesting stuff. All right, well, thanks a lot, everybody. Let me look and see. Are there? I don't see in.
All right, Kofi. Follow me.